more. Tickets are on sale at riotfest.org. And lucky for you, WCPT wants to send you. Go to heartlandsignal.com and sign up for the WCPT 820 Club for your chance to win Riot Fest 2023, September 15th through the 17th at Douglas Park, Chicago.
What is dedication?
My daughter is biological and my son is adopted. I love them both so much, from the morning when you wake up to putting them to bed at night and every moment in between. I think a parent's job is to protect our children, but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Marcel Spears. Keeping our global neighborhood safe is a tough job, one made just a bit safer with the help of America's brave military dogs. These dogs, who often take the same risks and make the same sacrifices as our human warriors, keep our troops safe by sniffing out bombs and IEDs, locating enemy positions, and bringing a sense of comfort and home to an almost unimaginable circumstance. Yet, when these brave K9 heroes retire, they're not always given the same treatment as our military VIPs, and are too often left overseas.
All right, sending Pam Morris-Walton through. Let me know if you guys can hear each other.
Okay, Pam Morris-Walton, how are you?
I hear you.
Okay, now we just need to make sure that you can be heard on
so they can enjoy
Facebook
happy,
and YouTube.
Healthy, well-deserved
You all
retirement.
let me
Waiting
know
on the
if you
video
want
to
me
load
hear
online.
her.
How you can help America's four-footed heroes? Visit
Okay, how you doing,
AmericanHumane.org.
Pam? Miss Pam, my gospel sister, sending you so much love.
All right, I can hear her on the Facebook video, so we're good.
Okay, fantastic.
And 1 minute, everybody.
Thank you.
World. We can change the world. We can. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, August 21st, 2023. I'm glad to be with you today, back again after Friday. I've been under the weather. I'm still under the weather, but I just didn't want to stay this far away from you today. As soon as I get off there, I'm getting back in the bed. But we've got a lot to talk about, so much. There is a study that came out. My gospel sister Pam Morris, that shows that it will take Black people more than 500 years, more than 500 more years to reach economic equality in the United States. More than 500 years. We're going to be talking with one of the authors of the study, Chuck Collins from the Institute for Policy Studies. And what are some of the solutions, particularly as we are in this election season? This is an issue I believe that we need to present to the Democratic and Republican parties, and to anyone who's running for president, anyone who is running for state, county, or local office. What is your plan to help Black people, to support Black people as we seek economic equality in America? 500 plus years? Are you serious? Wow. No, that's not acceptable. And it is not a Democratic problem. It's not Democrats' problems to resolve. It's not Republicans' problems to resolve. It's America's problem to resolve. So you need to talk to everybody to resolve it. That's politics. And then we're going to talk about former President Trump as his legal issues grow. How will this impact him, and how will this impact America internationally? We'll be talking with Dr. David Gibbs and Bryce Green about that. What is the perception I mean, let's be very clear. In democracies, leaders are indicted quite often. Yeah, this is kind of this is the way this rolls. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, we've got good news from our gospel sister, Pam Morris. I am so glad to be with you today. Hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to the rest of the show. The center of Tropical Storm Hillary has entered Southern California. Torrential rain and severe flooding are ongoing, hitting mountains north and east of Los Angeles hardest. A 5.1 magnitude earthquake struck near Los Angeles yesterday, as if they need more. Officials have warned of further catastrophic flooding, dangerous downed power lines, and mudslides. Just saw the head of their power company. He said that only 20,000 people at this time are without power. That's a good thing. More than 5 million customers they have at this particular power company in the Los Angeles area. President Biden is visiting Hawaii today after this month's deadly wildfires. Of course, many people were disappointed when he was asked about the Maui wildfires a little more than a week ago, and he said no comment. Well, the consoler-in-chief is on his way there with the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. He'll survey the damage and console residents. The visit comes as Biden's personal reaction and his government's response are under intense scrutiny, given the fact that $700 was offered by our government to everyone who's been displaced. Now, this is why we have given more than $20 billion the other week to Ukraine. You ought to be insulted, everybody. You ought to be insulted, and they need to be called out about it. Spain won the Women's World Cup yesterday. Spain defeated England 1-0 in Australia to claim its first women's championship. The goal scorer learned after the match that her father passed, Olga Carmona, sending so much love and prayers to her and to the team and to her family. Can you imagine? They withheld the information from her until after the game so that she could get through the game. Talk about a high and a low. God bless Miss Carmona and the Spanish women's soccer team. They are the world champions. A Russian spacecraft crashed into the moon. The uncrewed Luna 25 craft was on Russia's first lunar mission since 1976, but it crashed after entering an uncontrolled orbit. Saudi security forces have killed hundreds of Ethiopians at its border. Saudi forces on the Yemen border shot and fired explosives at migrants and asylum seekers attempting to enter the country in recent years. A new report said the killings, as well as the abuse of migrant detainees, could amount to crimes against humanity committed by an important strategic partner of the U.S. Those are some of the headlines, everybody. In weather today, the high will be 78 degrees. It'll be partly cloudy. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, partly cloudy. And of course, congratulations to Spain. In Major League Baseball, the Twins 2, the Pirates 0, the Cubs 4, the Royals 3, and the White Sox 10, and the Rockies 5. In the WNBA, the Sun bested the Sky 79-73, and the Storm bested the Lynx 88-74. Those are the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Our gospel sister, Pam Morris, is with us this morning. How are you doing, Miss Pam?
I am doing wonderful, and I am wishing and hoping that you feel better and you will leave the broadcast and go get some rest.
I am going to do that, I promise you. I don't think I have a choice.
Okay. I'm doing well.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, that's always good. That's a blessing. That's always a blessing. That's always a blessing to hear that you're doing well.
I am.
So
and
now,
this is a very special time.
Well, tell me about this special time, but I always want people to know about your book and know that where they can get it. Because, now this is important. I want people to get that book.
The Heart is 7 years old next Friday.
Wow. Is that another birthday for you?
This Friday. I'm sorry. This Friday, not next Friday. This Friday.
Do you
it's
celebrate
another
that
birthday for me.
as a birthday?
Yes, I will. I will celebrate that with the mother of the person whose heart I have.
Mm. God bless you.
Yeah, it's very special. Thank you. Very special. So this morning, I want to share with you about, I want you to protect your peace. Mm. We should get up every morning believing for a good day, expecting favor, knowing that God is directing our steps. Now, at the same time, we should realize that everything may not go perfectly inside your day. Every person may not treat you or me right, but our plan may not even stay on schedule. It may change. Your schedule may change. There may be some bumps in the road and things that we didn't see coming come. But if you're going to enjoy the day, if your plans work out, you're setting yourself up just in case you think they are going to work out, and disappointment just may come. Listen to this. In our cars, we carry a spare tire. I do. When I drive somewhere, I'm not expecting to have a flat. I'm not expecting that I'm going to hit a pothole in this state. I'm not expecting to get to my destination with late. I'm expecting to get to my destination as planned. In the same way, even though we're expecting our plans to work out, even though you're expecting good breaks, you need to have your spare tire, your peace. You need to have provision in case it just don't go your way. At the start of your day, like we're doing right now, we need to make a decision that no matter what comes against us, we're going to not get upset. No matter what somebody says, we're not going to be offended. No matter what delays or disappointment, because we've already made up our mind to stay in peace. You decided, I decided ahead of time, I'm going to stay in peace. So I just want you to protect your peace, because your happiness is not someone else's responsibility. It's your responsibility to be happy. That's it.
Amen. You know, my father told me that when I was a little girl. He said, don't ever give anyone that responsibility. He said, more than that, baby. Here, Daddy, when I tell you this, don't give someone else that power.
My God.
I was about 8 or 9. He would drop these gems on me. I didn't know what he was talking about. So, you know,
and now you look back and say, oh, my God, thanks, Dad.
Oh, my God.
Thank you, Santita.
Oh, thank you for the reminder. Or thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm going to get that spare tire, y'all. Your book, how can we get it?
That's right.
We got to get this book.
It's Pam Moore's Speaks Up. Okay, for an autograph copy, and I only have paper soft copies left for an autograph copy. Okay, on PamMooreSpeaks.com, but you can go to Amazon and get the ebook. You can get online iTunes. You can get the hard copy or the soft copy on Amazon.com. That's it.
Do you have an Audible? Do you have an Audible copy of the book?
Yeah, not yet.
You got to do that because your voice is so beautiful, and I think it would no one would be able to tell. People need to hear it in your voice. Please do that right away.
I've heard that before. I've heard it before.
Oh my
Thank you.
Absolutely. I love you, Pam Morris, our gospel sister.
I love you.
Oh boy.
I love you.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh no, don't even try, honey. All right, I love you. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
I love
Take
her.
care, sweetheart.
I learned from you. I love you. I love you. Pam Morris. Everybody, Pam Morris Walton, excuse me. I cleaned that up. Come on now, because she is a Sadie married lady.
It's okay.
And Mr. Walton will let you know I am her husband, and he behaves that way. We love it, and we love you. Love you. Love you so much. Absolutely.
Okay.
Dr. Shanina Knighton, how you doing?
I'm good, Santita. How are you?
Ooh, a little under the weather, but I am weathering the storm, girl. How about that?
That's so awesome.
That's right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's right. I had to get on up this morning. I mean, I got up on Friday, but I just said, I was wearing this. My head was wrapped literally as I was on the air because my head was throbbing. And it's like everything hurt. But I said, I've got to get on there, but I just can't get on camera. But today I said, okay, I'll be on camera. But as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go get back in the bed because I need to do that. But I'm here today. That's not a complaint, everybody. It just lets you know, you do what you have to do. And I'm glad that God gave me enough strength to do that and enough good sense to know that after this is over, I'm going to get some rest. Oh, Dr. Knighton, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Look, first day of my baby's day of school, all of them on the same day.
Oh, my heavens. Well, you know, it is back to school time. Oh, my goodness. Where did the summer go? So what's on your mind today?
Absolutely.
What's on your mind today? We have the
So,
president going to Maui. We're hearing more about new strains of COVID, and some people are saying that it's the new flu, and da 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 da. What's on your mind today?
so I think the biggest thing, Santita, like for us to like really stick with, because we are absolutely in this season right now, is really going to be around infection prevention and control and preparation around natural disasters as well as storms.
Mm.
One of the biggest challenges that we're encountering right now, especially as it relates to the weather, is just the fact that, long story short, we have it to where when power goes out, when, you know, people lose access to, let's say, clean water because maybe like their sewer back up, there are challenges that happen, and being prepared for those means that you can protect yourself from illness as much as possible. And so with that is being aware that when you have these natural disasters that are going to occur or these storms are going to occur, are you making sure that, let's say, you might have, backup electricity if possible for your appliances? It's making sure, like, hey, do I keep an extra bag or two of ice in the freezer if I need to keep something cool? Especially not necessarily thinking about food as much as we would be thinking about medicine, such as an insulin or something like that. Are there mechanisms, meaning like, okay, there is no telling when the, let's say, lights will be back on? Do you have charcoal just in case you need to grill food or be able to heat it up over a grill?
Oh, wow.
And so while it sounds very survivor mechanism-like, the reason why these are important things to think about is because when people say, oh, well, you know, the lights will only be off for a couple of hours, but they end up being off for a couple of days, that then ends up resulting in foodborne illness, because somebody will say, oh, well, it seems like it's still cold, so I'll still try to consume it. But we know that food has to be at a certain temperature before it can be cooked, and in order for it to still be safe. Same exact thing when we're talking about water. If there is standing water, meaning, so for example, the water is turned off for whatever reason. Let's say it's a water main break. Let's say that there's some backup and someone's saying that there is a water advisory and the water is not safe. You may not necessarily have that stove to be able to boil that water on, but hey, maybe I do need to put it on the grill, you know, in order for it to be able to heat up. So it's just really coming down to this point in time, not necessarily me telling people what they should have, but taking stock and inventory of what it is that you do have, just in case any of these things do occur. As we see right now, there are multiple hurricanes that are going on, not multiple, but a hurricane. There has been multiple at this point, you know, on the West Coast. We know that ramps up, you know, down in the Gulf pretty soon. We know that we're in hurricane season right now. We know that even to us in the Midwest, even though we may not necessarily get hurricanes, we may get the remnants or the after effects of it. And so just understanding what it's like to prepare. We've already seen a lot of rain this year. Santita, I remember maybe about a couple months ago, we were on a radio show and you were talking about the sewage backup in some of the basements in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is the reality of things that are happening right now. And even with that, like sewage backup, inhaling those fumes and those toxins can make somebody sick and can bring on respiratory symptoms. And for some people, those respiratory symptoms can be deadly because they may already have a compromised respiratory system. So if someone has allergies, if someone has asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or any other kind of lung illness, then having exposure to those toxins can then trigger a worse reaction. And so it's very important for us to be aware of the seasons that we're in right now, and also understanding what survival looks like, what it looks like in order to make sure that we are not exposing ourselves to other illnesses. Because while, yes, we may still be living and still breathing, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a healthy manner. So the number one thing is my environment safe for me to be free from infection? Is my food safe in order for me to be free from infection? And is my water safe in order for me to be free from infection? Remember, there are going to be organisms that we cannot see. So when we have standing water, when we have, conditions that are not favorable, when we talk about sanitation, then that definitely increases the risk of illnesses.
And be prepared for the day, like you said, when things don't go right. I think in the United States, and maybe because I've spent a lot of time out of the country and in areas that are developing, and quite frankly, in many European countries, which are developed, if you will, open quote, close quote, there are places where the electricity is off for several hours a day. And Americans really have been very blessed to be able to wake up and turn on the lights, have gas, have electricity, yada, yada, yada. That is not the norm for most people in the world. And increasingly, it's something that we have to really begin to look at, Dr. Knighton, and say, hey, wait a minute, the storm could come. Who would have thought that they'd be having these storms out in LA, right? And that's mudslides.
Exactly. They said 1929 for there to be a storm near San Diego was the last time that a hurricane was in that area. And so when you look at those dates, when you look at things that are happening, like sometimes we get comfortable with that every once in a while, or things never being occurring in a certain area. For example, even us in Ohio, I'll be honest, to think that we would have been experiencing, the smoke issues from Canada, but it's a real thing. And so even having to be prepared and put on the N95, during the summer when it's hot. But unfortunately, yes, things are happening right now, and being not prepared is best to be prepared. So that way we're not ending up on, I would say, the short end of the stick of sometimes unfortunate situations that we cannot help. Unfortunately, Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature does, but that absolutely doesn't mean that we can't keep ourselves as safe as possible during those times.
Well, one day I'm going to bring you on. I need to pre-record it. This is a little early for my mother. I'm going to bring you on with her because she is the ultimate survivalist. Canned food, sardines. She is ready. If the electricity goes out, she said, wait a minute. She said, y'all are not ready. I'm ready. So your father and I are covered. I don't know about you. I said, oh, Mom. She said, hey, you all keep acting as if, but my mother will be 80. God bless her, come March. So she is, she lived through a period where her mother and her aunt, who helped to raise her as well, they washed clothes, and they didn't have a dryer. They had a clothing line, and they put their clothes out in the yard. And when I was growing up with my grandparents, when we'd go south, after they washed the clothes, Grandma Terry would hang the clothes on the clothing line, and then that's how you dried everything. So, we need to come on, everybody, get real, because there are a lot of things that are happening. Don't take anything for granted. Dr. Shanina Knighton, everybody. Hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA. Hey, Dr. Nina, that's her handle on social media. Follow her. Coming up, let's talk about all of these indictments against President Trump. It's not uncommon for leaders in democratic and semi-democratic nations to be indicted and to run and win. Yeah. But how is this going to impact how America is viewed around the world? How will this impact Donald Trump and his perception and how he's perceived as he goes forward? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Oh, Dr. Knighton, how you doing, girl?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, ooh, It's been a tough few days, but I'm better. I am much, much better.
Good.
Much better. But I could not come on camera on Monday, on Friday. It was like, oh no. I mean, I had my head tied up. And because I was trying to stay warm, and it was all this stuff. But these things happen. What are you going to do?
They are, and I think you stated it perfect in terms of just us being aware of the storms. And I'm saying the storms, and not just the storms of like we talking about weather, but even too when we talking about these respiratory illnesses, and that season that's coming up.
Oh yeah.
And I know we brought it up before, but them beds, it's not enough hospital beds, and that's another thing. We talk about hospital beds not being able to cover these new strains of COVID, RSV, flu, and everything else.
Sending Dr. Gibbs and Bryce Green through.
They're like, yes, natural disasters are a real thing. And what happens if you need to go inside of a facility for any reason, but those facilities don't have electricity, don't have water or other resources? And we saw what happened when that healthcare system's computer system got hacked. Like, these are real things that are occurring right now. And so we have to be aware of what safety looks like and recognize that, yes, while things are very comfortable, and it's not living in a place of fear, it's living in a place of faith, but also preparedness. And so if you're not, and thinking about the future, meaning like you have to somewhat think about how can I stay safe, or what is something that I haven't thought about that will make sure that maybe my food is not going to waste, make sure that, I'm preserving as much electricity as possible. Do I have batteries on hand? So maybe instead of going to get that fast food outing or going to go get that food outing, that's a pack of batteries that's going to end up contributing to some light.
Well, first of all, we need to stop playing. I think Dr. Gibbs and Bryce Green, I'm talking with Dr. Shanina Knight, and she does a segment on the show every day. She's an infection preventionist, registered nurse, college lecturer, Case Western Reserve, brilliant woman, and so trained. And what irritates me, we're in a country of 330 to 340 million people, and that's a conservative estimate. That's those of us who answered the census. We don't even have 1 million hospital beds. We have 920,000 hospital beds. So when you talk about, oh my gosh, COVID, and COVID was horrible. The pandemic was horrible, awful. But the big lie, oh, people are out in the streets, this is so terrible. No, the lie was you were never prepared. I mean, whenever I ask people how many hospital beds there are in the United States, no one has any idea. First of all, we're not even thinking about it. We assume that if we get sick, there's a bed for us. There is not a bed for you. Not even for 10%, not even for 1%. If you had a bed for 1% of us, that would be 3.3 million beds. There are not that.
60 seconds, everyone.
So that's something that we need to begin to push on, because they need to stop playing with us. Okay? I'm tired of that. Then you see people out in the streets, and this is the most horrible thing ever. And then now ivermectin. Did you see now ivermectin is okay? Did you see that?
I did see that.
I
did, but the thing is, I'm not surprised, because that was one of the biggest controversies that existed, and I know it's not enough time today. But the question is why is certain things that were already FDA approved then become FDA banned?
10 seconds.
Stand by. We're coming up. No, money. And and I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I'll say it. And it's disgusting. People are disgusting. People die.
We can change the world.
Stand by.
Change the world. Change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about 500 plus years it will take for Black people to achieve economic equality in America. That's at the top of the hour. But right now, let's talk about former President Trump and his legal troubles and what it means internationally. How is he perceived internationally? And is this an outlier? I was reading Foreign Policy magazine. It's very interesting. This is not unusual, everybody. A foreign policy analysis found that at least 78 leaders in 53 democratic or semi-democratic countries, the vast majority of which have held successful democratic elections, well, they've been indicted since 2000. This is not unusual. So how is this all going to play out? Of course, we've got Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting and Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona, brilliant historian. Let me start with you, Dr. Gibbs. What do you make of this? What will be the impact?
Well, it will play out very much in terms of the way it's playing out in this country, in that foreign leaders and foreign populations that detest Donald Trump will be delighted by the indictments. And those that view him more positively or more neutrally will view this as a political operation designed to undermine him for political reasons. I think that's the way it's seen. A basic problem you have is what's going on right now is unprecedented. And you could say, in a certain sense, Trump is an unprecedented political figure, which he is. But we've never in the history of this country had a former president indicted. And so we are moving into, as the phrase goes, uncharted territory here. And there is a question to be asked. On the one hand, did Trump commit crimes? And I think the evidence is overwhelming that he did. The other question, though, is what is the motivation behind the prosecutions? Is it strictly a question of enforcing the law, or is there political motivation? And I think the suspicion is, and I think probably the reality is, there's a very heavy political motivation here. And that does affect the legitimacy of the prosecutions and the whole process. And that is a concern of mine. I think it should be a concern more generally. This is something that lacks legitimacy. And the way this could play out is very possibly it could lead to increased violence in the United States. There are a lot of guns in this country, including automatic weapons. And it would not come as a big surprise to me if we start seeing people using those weapons in the process of this prosecution and the associated election. That's a real concern of mine.
Well, it's very interesting because coming out of the civil rights movement, I'm accustomed to government being weaponized against Dr. King, against the Black Panthers, Fred Hampton,
Right.
please my father,
Right.
this man who helped him
Yeah.
drive him around, take care of him. He was sent to kill my father. And we found that out, for example, and on and on and on and on it goes. But now the right feel that they're experiencing that. And a case can be made for the weaponization of politics and political processes, which I think, you're getting at. And many Democrats are loath to discuss that. But I'm like, look, y'all, either you're against the weaponization of our government against anybody, or you're not. You're not. I mean, the government is heavily implicated in the death of a president, at least one, John Kennedy, his brother, Dr. King, Malcolm X. We can just keep on going. This is insane. And now, and I remember when Donald Trump did this document dump, Dr. Gibbs, when he was president, and which he was, revealing these things about Dr. King and other people. I said, no, there's method to this madness. He's letting you know that this is how the government behaves. I mean, come on, J. Edgar Hoover, no one even talks about his behavior. Yeah. He was so dangerous. And that's never even mentioned today. Never. He blackmailed everybody, presidents, everybody, to stay in power. I mean, it's awful. And it is not stopped. So where are we going to go with this? Because clearly there's a partisan divide. You have Democrats who feel this way. You have Republicans who feel that way. Instead of people walking down the middle on principle saying, you know what, let's not do this. Clearly Donald Trump is guilty of some things. But I think we have to be very, very careful because, like you said, people have guns and they have feelings.
Yep. That's true. I think that, you're opening a Pandora's box here as well. And don't think for a minute the Republicans won't try to do something like that against Democrats in the future, because they will. Not only that, but, someone else basically, I think will be on the radar screens at this point, is a third-party candidate. In particular, I'm thinking, well, Robert Kennedy, but I think even more so Cornel West, I think, is eliciting a lot of anger among Democrats. And there's a very harsh tone in the Democratic Party right now to anybody who basically challenges the sort of status quo. And I suspect you're going to see them basically look through Cornel West's personal life with a fine-tooth comb and find anything they can to use against him. And, it's going to get very nasty against Cornel West. And so I think that this is going to really create an atmosphere of really poisoning the political process, where you get these extremely harsh personal attacks as a standard operating procedure, accompanied, at least in the case of Trump, by criminal prosecutions. It's not as if it's just going to stop with Trump. It's not the way it's going to work. This is going to poison the whole political process. And I'm very concerned about that, even though, as you said, it is highly likely Trump did engage in some criminal activity. That probably is true. But whether it justifies prosecution or not, and the breaking with all historical precedent, is another matter.
Particularly since Chuck Schumer said this is going to play out, and this will be an intelligence agency thing. Remember he said that when Trump went in?
That's right. Yep.
I mean, he called it.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean,
yes, he did.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. I mean, FBI, they don't spy on the Proud Boys. They are the Proud Boys. They spy on Black Lives Matter. Today, they set up people on the left, talk them into committing some kind of malfeasance, and then they arrest them. It's just absolutely out of bounds. Bryce Green, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that one of the major problems facing this country is the institutionalized criminality that regularly goes unadjudicated. I mean, you mentioned J. Edgar Hoover, who effectively functioned as one of the most powerful people in the country for decades, committed dozens and hundreds of thousands of crimes, even to the point of inducing murder, kidnapping, illegally reading mail, you name it.
No,
but
wait,
none
stop.
of these crimes have gone.
Let me put this in here. This man tried to destroy Dr. King's life. He sent tapes of him to his wife. He tried to get him to kill himself. If you look at his speech as he was accepting that Nobel Prize, the way he leaned into that lectern, because J. Edgar Hoover tried to get him to kill himself before he would get to Stockholm. This was an evil, vile man. And no one wants to talk about that. You want to pick through everybody else's personal life, but you want to leave him and Clive Tolson alone. I don't have a problem with him being gay. I don't have a problem with him cross-dressing. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with him is his criminality. The fact that he made everybody else's life a living hell. That's my problem. Be what you're going to be. Everybody's going to be something. But come on, Bryce.
And it's not just Hoover, it's the presidents too. I mean, you name every single president. You have the crimes of Biden, Obama, Trump, Clinton. All of these people have done unspeakable acts of horror, mostly in the realm of foreign policy. Millions of people have been killed as a result of these guys' policies, but that is not adjudicated. That's not considered a scandal. And so when you have a serious crime against the country, which, I do believe that Trump is being indicted in this case for a serious crime of trying to overturn an election, it really falls flat on the American people because we're so used to seeing major crimes go unadjudicated. I mean, you talk about elections. I mean, the Bush administration, we have documented proof that they committed actual felonies in order to win the 2000 election, but that has never been adjudicated.
They stole it. They stole it.
They stole it, plain and simple. And we have the Hillary Clinton's campaign disseminating information to try and get the 2016 election discredited. vis-a-vis this whole Russiagate thing. That's never been adjudicated. And while I do agree that Trump's actual moves to try and reverse the results of the 2020 election are more serious than the Clinton and that election scandal, in the grand scheme of things, if you're an American citizen and you're watching all these crimes go unadjudicated, but all of a sudden everyone and their mother seems to be clamoring over how much we need to, how much no one is above the law when it comes to Trump. Well, I mean, the American people aren't likely going to take that seriously. And like Dr. Gibbs said, there's a real risk of this being completely politicized. I mean, not a risk. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And the question is, if we don't have a society that adequately holds up the law, then that means every time the law is applied, it is a political move. It is a result of the power structures asserting their will. And this seems to be the case against Trump. Now, we can go over and over, time and time again, about whether or not Trump is guilty or whether or not Trump deserves some sort of punishment for his crimes. But I think that misses the fact that no one is usually held accountable for their crimes, and that if Trump is going to be the only one held accountable, well, then we're going to have a situation that looks a lot like Watergate. You know, you had all of these presidents before Nixon being vicious criminals. You had Nixon committing heinous crimes, and then you have Nixon going down for one of his relatively minor crimes, and one that he likely had very little to do with. But that's been held up as an example of how American institutions are able to hold power accountable. But that's complete fiction. And if the Trump indictment goes forward and if he is convicted, I have a feeling that another fiction is going to be concocted, that America is capable of holding powerful people accountable, that in America, no one is above the law. And that myth has really sustained the American political mythos for years and years and years. And if this goes forward without adequate critique of what's really going on, well, then we're going to have another myth. You're going to have Nixon and Trump being the two presidents that were able to, that our institutions were able to hold accountable. I mean, even recently, you had Woodward and Bernstein, whose role in Watergate is very interesting and deserves scrutiny. You had them come out, every so often they'll roll those two out, they'll roll John Dean out to tell the world that, oh, well, this is worse than Watergate. And that we need to hold our institutions accountable. And it's really laughable when you consider that you didn't have anyone on mainstream news talking about how the fact that Obama killed a 16-year-old American citizen in a drone strike, no one considered that beyond the pale. No one considered it beyond the pale when we were funding terrorists to destroy Syria, or when we were bombing Libya, or when we were expanding the U.S. military all over Africa. I mean, no one considers these scandals. But the fact that they'll trot out Woodward and Bernstein to tell you that, well, Trump is uniquely evil. Like I said, it's the creation of a new myth.
No, I wish they would. I mean, Bob Woodward, who, if you're president, none can become president unless they go by Bob Woodward, because he's got to write a book on you. Okay, whatever that means. Okay, so he knows that COVID is this deadly disease. He knows that this is a pandemic that's going to wreak havoc. He leaks everything else, but he chose not to leak that because he had a book coming out in almost a year. Are you serious right now, Bryce? Dr. Gibbs? No one asked him, no one challenged him on that? You find out at the beginning of 2020 how dangerous COVID is because the president is confiding in you, because you get to Washington. Hey, I've been there. I've been in the room, hon. And you find out who the players are, and you got to play ball with them because that's just how it works, y'all. And you get in there and you're talking to him and you confide in him. Hey, we got this thing. We don't know what it is. And he sounded like he really didn't know what it was. I don't know. But if I tell people that this is as dangerous as I think it could be, it could wreak havoc on the country. But if I don't say so, I just, but it is dangerous now. This is bad. Bob Woodward had that information, Dr. Gibbs and Bryce Green, and he held it. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Are you serious, Dr. Gibbs?
Bob Woodward became famous, of course, with Bernstein for the Watergate scandal, as everybody knows. It very much put him on the map as a figure. I agree with Bryce Green that in some ways you could say that the Watergate scandal was the least of what Nixon did. The worst crimes he committed were indeed in the area of foreign policy, the crimes committed during the Vietnam War, during the bombing of Cambodia, quote unquote, more minor crimes like the overthrow of Allende in Chile, others like that. One could say, I think more recently in the 21st century, perhaps the worst crime committed by any president, Democrat or Republican, was the Iraq War, when George W. Bush lied us into war with the complicity of the Democratic Party, resulting in the deaths of over 1 million people, the destabilization of an entire region, the expenditure of, I believe, upwards of $4 trillion for nothing. That was a far worse crime than anything Trump is being accused of here. And it's remarkable how we tend to brush away and whitewash these larger crimes that focus upon the relatively small ones. Trump, paying off, Stormy Daniels, basically, to cover up the sex scandal, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of really, do they have to do that? Do they have to indict him for that? It's so trivial. Even the larger crimes, the issue of trying to overturn the election, which really is serious, and I was disturbed by that, that very likely is a criminal offense. It pales in comparison to the Iraq War, okay? And it's remarkable the extent to which people have gotten all scot-free. I mean, one of the key figures in the Iraq War was Victoria Nuland, who was National Security Advisor to Richard Cheney. She's now number 2 in the State Department. She's, was a major figure basically conducting U.S. policy in Niger, where she was there recently, trying to sway the government in Niger. She was a major figure leading to the war between Russia and Ukraine. And she hasn't paid any price whatsoever for the Iraq War. On the contrary, she's been rewarded for it.
These are people who outed an agent. They outed Valerie Plame, for heaven's sake. These are people. This is an administration that outed an active CIA agent who was undercover.
Yeah.
And no one says anything. It could have unplugged her. It could have unplugged her husband. May he rest in peace. Just these scandals. But it seems to me that if you are anti-war, or if you even seek peace, the military-industrial complex will use the intelligence-industrial complex to come after you. But if you kill people, bomb people, you get off scot-free. It's just an observation.
That's how I see it, is that basically that the really huge crimes that are committed by presidents are trivialized, whereas smaller crimes, sometimes even really very trivial crimes like, consensual sex scandals, these things basically are, blown up into something more substantial than they should be. Let's just say that. And I think that is at least part of what is going on here. I mean, another thing that's going on here is indeed not just the weaponization of the system of justice, but also the intelligence services. The intelligence services have been playing an outsized role in U.S. domestic politics. I mean, one of the things that's often forgotten is that when Trump won the 2016 election, literally with a majority of the vote, but with the electoral votes, the Democrats did have a plan. It was in Politico. It was a public plan. It was the idea of Nancy Pelosi's daughter to have the CIA give a secret briefing to the electors to try and sway the electors in favor of Hillary Clinton, a last-ditch effort to prevent the inauguration of Trump. It didn't happen, thankfully. But nevertheless, there was an effort that was publicly proposed to have the CIA, in essence, choose the next president of the United States. And the fact that the Democrats seem to be so respectful, even reverential of the CIA and the FBI in spite of their records, it's to me very disturbing.
I mean, and they're okay with it. I mean, and we have more and more of them running for office, and they are now in Congress. And I'm like,
That's right.
isn't this is interesting? And Democrats but we've become the pro-war party. We've supported that which we wanted to reform years ago. I mean, John Kennedy said, I want to splinter this into a million tiny pieces, scatter them to the four winds. They are dangerous. And I just, Bryce, I don't understand what we're doing here. It's like everything is just upside down.
You're right. It's strange times, and I don't think anyone has a clear idea about what to go forward, other than continuing to do the work and the education that needs to be done. I mean, we talk about how criminal the state and the power apparatus is, but the only way that's going to change is from a bottom-up pressure. You're not going to you can't rely on the system to correct itself without any sort of outside pressure. And so that's why building robust organizations, media institutions, community organizations, building that is, I think, the most important thing that we can do if we want to combat the sort of creeping criminality, the creeping fascism that America is really looking at. Because without that, you know who is organized? Rich people. And you know who else is organized? Right-wing lunatics. But you know who doesn't have any sort of organization? The forces that are pushing back against that. And, I don't mean any organization. Mm-hmm. There are good organizations, but if we look at the power distribution in America, people on the left have a lot less of it. And so if we get to that point where we can actually muster people, muster organizations, get media institutions that are able to tell people the truth, that aren't swept away by these myths of, oh, we're finally holding people accountable and no one is above the law. No, we need to be giving people a clear-eyed view of how the law works, how the law is a tool for the rich and powerful to maintain their status. And once we are able to do that, then I think we might see a positive change in this country. And even on the outside, I mean, look at the way other countries are handling their business. Look at the way the world is pulling away from America and going closer to China and Russia.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's because they understand that we are a criminal society and that you really can't make a deal with us. And if you do make a deal with us, it'll be the worst deal of your life. And it's the same deal that the American people got. And it's the same reason that many Americans are turning away from our system. It's the reason that half of Americans just don't even bother voting because they don't even think that it matters. We need to be able to change that somehow.
And the thing is, we have the power to change it, but we have to have some real conversations about this and really understand what we're looking at, everybody. And please, just stop being so partisan about this. There's some things that are really above, that go beyond, that are transpartisan, like your principles. Look, I want everybody to register to vote. I don't care what party you're in. I really do not. I don't. I'm a registered Democrat because my brother is in Congress. If I, in Chicago, do not register for a party, I cannot vote for him. I'm going to do that. But I'm independent. And I'm an independent Democrat, and I'm proud of that. Because I like to listen to people. I mean, the biggest boss mayor in the history of the United States was right here in Chicago. There was no greater plantation than the one. Let's continue to have these conversations. Now, what I want you to do is stay tuned, because at the top of the hour, just in a few minutes, we're going to have Chuck Collins from the Institute for Policy Studies talking to us about the fact that it will take, get this, Dr. Gibbs, get this, Bryce Green, it will take more than 500 years for Black Americans to achieve economic equality in America. 500 years. Wow. From this day. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. And Bob Smith, I would not force anyone to register to vote. I wouldn't do it. But I think we ought to make it easier. We have obstacles to voter registration. It's baked in the cake. You know what? I think everybody ought to be automatically registered. And then if you don't vote, that's on you. It's on you.
But I heard proposals about the driver's license voter registration. You know, I was like in high school or whatever, and I was like, well, this seems like the obvious solution. And here we are, not having implemented it.
Oh, wait a minute.
Sending
Automatic
Chuck Collins through.
voter registration. Thank you so much, Devin. Voter registration. It is the law in Texas that you're supposed to register all high school seniors. It's the law. It's just not been enforced. If you want to opt out, that's fine. But that's part of your civic duty, and it should be part of your civic right. So, you know, I think we've got a lot that we've got to look at, like right now. And so before you all go, Dr. David Gibbs, University of Arizona, and Bryce Green from, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. I've got Chuck Collins, my dear friend from the Institute for Policy Studies. He does such brilliant work. And he's come forward with this study that shows that Black people will achieve economic equality. It's going to take 500 plus years for that to happen in the United States. You can't make this stuff up. I'm going to take to the bed for more than just being a little under the weather. It's just, Chuck Collins, you've taken me under.
Good morning. Sorry to do that to you.
Oh my word! I said, my goodness. Oh boy! But I'm really glad that I'm glad you. Thank you for making the time this morning, and we will continue to talk about this. And Bryce and Dr. David Gibbs, I can't wait to have you all back. But if you want to stay and listen to this conversation, you're more than welcome to, because it's a tremendous.
Absolutely. I got to get ready for class. It's the first day of class.
Oh my gosh, where did the summer go, Bryce? Huh?
I know. I didn't even take a real vacation.
I didn't. Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, it's just like I just got my summer clothes out. I know that sounds really minor to you guys, but really. I haven't even worn all my summer clothes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? I mean, what are we, a week and a half away from Labor Day?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oy. Help me, Lord.
Maybe that'll be my break. Labor Day.
But everybody's taking a break. Well, you know what? Take it. I tell you what, take it. Just take it. That's what you need to do. Take it. Take it. Why not? I mean, and let me tell you something. Take it or it'll get taken from you. What you've got to do, That's true. Trust me, I have learned you have got to rest. You've got to rest. If you don't rest, you will regret it. That's the only thing that's kind of helping me right now. I'm telling you, the only thing that's kind of helping me right now is that I have been in bed for 2-3 days. And I'm going to go back and get in it. Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah. So I can.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on, Santita.
Always. Sending you so much love. Dr. David Gibbs, sending you so much love. And Chuck Collins, sending you so much love. I'm so glad that you're with us today.
Me too. Good to be with you.
And thank you for
all I've had to wear this summer is my raincoat, so I don't have to have a lot of fashion struggles there. Just what color raincoat?
I love my fashion struggles because I love my clothes. Hello, I love it. Look.
No, I would like to have some fashion struggles. There's nothing it's just been raining all in New England.
Oh, I'm telling you, I love it. And I am, that I would not be able to do. The bane of any woman's existence is having to sit up with rain. Your hair, oh my gosh. You're like, wait a minute. Whoa, hold on. What are you doing? Because your hair is never right. Black, white, brown, yellow, red. It doesn't matter. You're mad about it. No, I don't want that. You can have it. And I'm just trying to get through here because it wasn't really hot here this summer, which was interesting. It was a very mild summer in Chicago. It seems like because we used to have the dog days of August. We didn't have that this time. Didn't. Just stayed very mild throughout the summer. Very, very mild. And for those people who don't have heat, who don't have air conditioning and things like that, I'm glad for them. Because it's just like, you're glad for mild winters for people because a lot of people don't have heat. So It's just a lot.
Yeah, we are luckier than our friends in the Southwest and the heat dome in Missouri, and we'll take a little cool and wet over 100 weeks of 100-degree days. So yeah,
118, 120 degrees. I mean, are you serious? I'm not ready for that. No, and no air. Oh. And oh no. But I am so. Why did you? Well, I'll ask you this when we get on the air about why you were committed to this study. Because I sent it to my brother immediately, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't see it." He said, "This one escaped my attention." I said, "Oh no!" So I'm going to connect the two of you.
Great.
Before the week
we're definitely trying to get the word out this week. So appreciate you.
60 seconds.
Sharing the word.
Oh yeah. I'm going to do that and push it because I think it ought to be a campaign issue.
A dream.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Still a nightmare. You'd flip that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh boy, just stand by. Okay, how much time?
10 seconds.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, August 21st, 2023. It's a joy to be with you on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and of course, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please meet my morning stars, Dave and Robert and Ashley from Memphis, and everybody over there, Carolyn, and sending you all so much love today. Thank you for joining us today. And please like and share the show. We have had a lot to talk about as we were looking at really taking another look at these Trump indictments and what they will mean politically, what they mean internationally, what they mean domestically. It is of something of great import. Keep your eyes open, everybody. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. And let's talk about 500 years. It will take more than 500 years for Black people in America to achieve economic equality. How can that be? How can that be? How can that be? And you know what? I'm going to send you something. I'm going to send something to my dear beloved Devin Andrakis, because I want you to hear what Martin Luther King said about this some time ago. And I think that we need to be real clear that he spoke to this. He spoke to the try and play this just in a few minutes. Devin, I'm going to send this to you right now. Okay. And I thought about this and I forgot to send it to you last night. But first, let me get through some of these headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. The center of Tropical Storm Hillary has entered Southern California. Torrential rain and severe flooding are ongoing, hitting mountains north and east of Los Angeles hardest. Indeed, they had a 5.1 magnitude earthquake. It struck near Los Angeles. Boyd, praying for our brothers and sisters out in Southern California. President Biden is visiting Hawaii today after this month's deadly wildfires. He'll survey the damage and console residents. Hope he decides to give them more money than $700. We just gave Ukraine $20+ billion more dollars, but he offered to give each one of those residents of Lahaina $700. Come on, y'all. This is insulting. Spain won the Women's World Cup yesterday. Spain defeated England 1-0 in Australia to claim its first women's championship. We're praying for the goal scorer, Olga Carmona. The team withheld this information from her father died. Wow, her father died, and she learned after the match that her father had died, sending her love and prayers. Talk about a high-low moment, sending prayers to them as they celebrate this historic victory for the country of Spain. A Russian spacecraft crashed into the moon. The uncrewed Luna 25 craft was on Russia's first lunar mission since 1976, but it crashed after entering an uncontrolled orbit. Security forces, Saudi security forces, have killed hundreds of Ethiopians at its border. On the Yemen border, they shot and fired explosives at migrants and asylum seekers attempting to enter the country in recent years, according to a new report. The killings, as well as the abuse of these migrant detainees, could amount to crimes against humanity committed by an important strategic partner of the United States. Everybody in Chicago will have a high of 78 degrees, partly cloudy. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 87 degrees, partly cloudy. And of course, in Major League Baseball, the Twins 2, the Pirates 0. Cubs 4, the Royals 3, the White Sox 10, the Rockies 5. In the WNBA, the Sun bested the Sky 79-73. The Storm bested the Lynx 88-74. Do we have that lined up? For us to play right now?
Yeah,
Devin? Yeah, I mean, this is something, and I've been hearing a couple of things, several things that Dr. King had talked about. This is a couple of minutes, but I wanted you to hear this, everyone, because this really is like the perfect prologue to this report, this brilliant report that was co-authored by Chuck Collins, who's our guest right now. Let's play the audio.
The Negro. I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that was in the lead up to the Poor People's March on Washington. Indeed, that was the last campaign that Dr. King was on before he was diverted to Memphis. And that's the guy who my parents worked for. That was the Dr. King that my father left the University of Chicago to work for, that guy. So 60 years after he gave his iconic I Have a Dream speech, and as he began to really critique the structure of America economically, not just socially and culturally and politically, but this economic structure, here we are. It will take more than 500 years for African Americans to achieve economic equality. Chuck Collins, one of the co-authors of this study, I'm so glad that you're with us today. What do you think of what he said? And how does that correspond to what your study showed?
Well, it was great
great to hear those words, and here we are 60 years after the March on Washington, where King also talked about, the promissory note to every American. The promissory note to African Americans was a bad check, came back insufficient funds. Mm-hmm. And to just hear even about, the Homestead Act and the gifts of land, people talk about no handouts. And here was, thousands of acres were given to, as he said, European peasants, people who had nothing, so they could at least have a land base. And yet people coming out of Reconstruction were excluded from that, blacks coming out of Reconstruction. So it's such a relevant context for, and here we are trying to look at, well, okay, in 60 years since Dr. King said, look, let's not get, let's think about the fierce urgency of now. Don't get tranquilized on the drug of gradualism. So let's, take a look at where we've come in 60 years if we've made so much progress. And, there's a few places where there's some good signs. The poverty rates are down, high school graduation rates are up. But if you look at the real indicators, income and wealth, that's where, the pennies on the dollar of black income versus white income, or black wealth compared to white wealth, at the pace of the last 60 years, not even to the last 100 years, the last 60 years, it would take 513 years to achieve black-white wealth or income equality, and it would take over 700 years to achieve wealth equality. So that, that pretty much gives us the focus. The focuses our attention on how, even if there's so-called progress, incremental progress, it's nowhere near the urgency that's required.
And I've seen some reports about this report talk about, they conflate the term economic equity with economic equality. Can you help us to understand the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's like if we were keep maintaining equity, we would keep the gap would sort of stay the same, and that's actually what's happened with home ownership. I mean, in 60 years, the percentage of black homeowners versus white homeowners has pretty much stayed about 30%. So that's not that may be equity, but it's not equality. The white home ownership rate is 74%. Black home ownership rate 44%, and it's pretty much stayed that way for 60 years. So we're lagging. The report is called "Still a Dream," but Santita, you said it. It's still a nightmare.
All I have to do is I'm a big HGTV fan, and I'm always very excited to see black people buying a home or featured there, because it's rare, quite frankly. And you always hear stories about people whose families immigrated here. And look, I am with that. I'm with it. And anyone who travels the world as I have, I don't know why my sound keeps going out here, but here it is. The opportunities that Americans have. I mean, we are the only industrialized nation where, at least up until they started scaling this back, where you were allowed to own your land. I mean, that's a big, big deal. In Canada, you can't do that. That's part of the Commonwealth. The Queen and now King Charles owns that. So that's a big, big, big deal. Only 15% of the world own 85% of the land in the world. That's a big deal. But Chuck, something is off here. Something is way off here. I mean, 513 years? What are some of the key findings of your study? I mean, like you said, we've had an increase with, say, getting a high school diploma. That's a great thing. But now we're going to see the widening, particularly with the affirmative action decision, and quite frankly, with affordability. University of Chicago is $100,000 a year, undergrad, right? What are some of the key findings of your study?
Well, as you say, high school attainment is the gap is narrowed, but college attainment the gap has not narrowed. The poverty rate, the poverty rate in 1963 for blacks was 51%. So the fact that it's come down to 20%, that's certainly a significant decline. But we're still talking 1 out of 5 black households, 1 out of 12 white households still live in poverty 60 years after the war on poverty. Unemployment. Do you have for every 12 cents? Basically, African Americans have essentially 12 cents on the dollar of wealth compared to non-black Americans. That was in 1962. Now we're at 18 cents of the dollar. Okay, well that's progress, but that's at that rate over 60 years. It would take 780 years for black wealth to equal non-black wealth. So that's one of the findings, that wealth continues to be this deep rift. And as I mentioned, home ownership is the same. And if you think about after World War II, just as Dr. King did in the quote talking about the Homestead Act and access to land, we did have a home ownership program, Federal Housing Administration, Farmers Home, Veterans Administration, these deep, low-interest 1% loans that went primarily to white households. So you saw a surge in white home ownership thanks to government subsidies, government programs, where people of color were barred from getting on that wealth-building train. And I can even think of my own family in Ohio. One of my uncles got a farmer's home loan, a 1% 40-year loan that made it possible for them to buy a farm outside Lima, Ohio. Well, that government investment in helping someone get access to land and housing meant that our family for generations was able to become homeowners. See, once you get on the train, it's you can help your kids and the next generation. And so here we are. 60 years later, the home ownership gap is still the same. The government programs that helped people buy houses have gone away for everybody, but we need to think about what would a massive land and housing access program look like that would reverse these inequalities in one generation.
Well,
Dr. King was saying now, fierce urgency of now.
The fierce urgency of now. I mean, because coming out of slavery, black people owned 14 million acres of land, and we have been hooked and crooked down to under 100. We lost 90% of that. We barely own 1.4 million acres of land now. I mean, the black farmer has been under attack. I mean, the first time you dropped a bomb on American soil was dropped on prosperous black people. Come on, Chuck. Median household income for black people has not even moved 1%. What is it? 36? Basically a third of 1%. I mean, so what? I mean, is this something? Should this be federal policy? How does this work? Give me a couple of solutions.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we know that the Homestead Act and legislation after World War II to help people become homeowners, it works. So we can have a targeted. It really does have to be federal, Santita. I think there's limits to what states and localities can do. As much as we should try. It's really the federal government that created these inequalities, and it's the federal government that can address them. So, people talk about, you could have asset building accounts. Everyone who's born, funds are put in their name. As they come of age, or 18, 21, they have a nest egg. They could use that for home ownership. They could use it to start a business. They can use it however they want. That could be a form of reparations. It could be both universal for everybody who's sort of excluded from access to wealth, but it also, for the reasons we're talking about, has to be targeted. There has to be a racial reparations dimension to it. It's because of the 400 years and the more recent decades of exclusion of access to wealth. So, I think a massive home ownership and land access program, asset building, wealth building accounts, full employment and guaranteed jobs, government as an employer of last resort. These are all things that help white people build wealth over the last century, and they'll work for everybody else. So I think bringing that bold view to this.
What do you say to white people and the former President Trump just said, look, my family had nothing to do with slavery? I'm like, but you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You came to a country that was built by enslaved people. That's the big myth that we have, is that immigrants built the country. Immigrants absolutely were able to come into this country and do work. But the country was built. It was able to become, facilitated, the economic engine that was facilitated by unpaid labor, not free labor, unpaid labor. So what do you say to white people? I mean, because what do you say to white people who would say, hey, you're taking from me to give to them?
A couple things. One is white people got wealth affirmative action. We benefited from centuries. Well, first of all, the unpaid labor, there was a debt. We as a society have an unpaid debt, an unpaid promissory note to people of African heritage. And we also, I'm a white person, we benefited from government programs that helped our families build wealth and access to land ownership and housing. And so part of addressing the legacy of discrimination and paying back the debt is to affirmatively put resources into home ownership, into asset accounts, and to do it in a way that acknowledges the debt and the repair and the reparation that's required, so we can move forward as a society with real equality. One of the problems of the last 40 years is we've been living through extreme inequality. You and I have talked about this. I mean, the richest 1%, mostly a wealthy white 1%, has gained most of the income and wealth gains of the last 40 years, and real wages are stagnant. So, I find you have a lot of white people say, hey, I haven't benefited from this booming economy, and they're right. But if you take the 400-year perspective, not just the 40-year perspective, you understand the systemic nature of racism and how it delayed and has thwarted people from having access to wealth and decent lives. So yeah, I talk to white people all the time where I'm just saying, look at the history and look at the debt and look at the ways in which our families benefited from public investments and government programs that helped our families get on the wealth building train.
Chuck Collins, Institute for Policy Studies, everything you do is so provocative, and I love it because you help us to think, and to grow. Will you come back so that we can talk about this too? I mean, when you have more time, because I think that this is, in 2024, I just think this needs to be an issue, not just for Democrats, but for Republicans. It's an American dilemma.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I always look forward to talking to you.
Oh,
thanks for having me on, and thanks for spreading the word about this report. And I hope your listeners will check it out at inequality.org or Institute for Policy Studies. We have the Still a Dream report. Please check it out.
I'm putting it right up here. I've already tweeted it out. It's already on my Facebook page, but we're going to do everything we can to get it out and get it out to everybody. America won't be right until you do right by everybody. Let's continue this discussion as we talk about this. What are some of the solutions? It's got to be transpartisan, everybody. It can't just be the Democrats. This can't be don't exclude the Republicans from this. This is an American issue. Period. till you do right by me, everything you do, think about, Color Purple said it, everything you think about gonna crumble. America's got to get right with the people they've wronged. I don't care who it is. That's institutional and it's personal. That's the time. These are the times in which we find ourselves living. Inequality.org, everybody. Institute for Policy Studies as well. Chuck Collins, he is a hero. And we just thank God for him and the work that he continues to plow ahead and do. Let's continue to have this discussion. Everybody call us at 773-763-WCPT. Oh, I ran all the way over my break. But thank you so much, Chuck. You're just the best.
Thank you, Santita. God bless you. You take care of yourself.
Oh, God bless you. Look, I'm going to get in bed as soon as this is done. I'm going to get some Campbell's soup. Some
Excellent.
Chicken noodle
Take care.
soup. Thank you so much.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Good. That's what I'm going to do.
All right. Bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Take care.
Absolutely.
All right, Santita.
Everybody, what do you think about that? 500 plus years? Who has that kind of time? They need to go on and get this together with a quickness, and they can. That's the thing. That's the thing. It can be done. It can be done. Oh, hallelujah. You guys. Oh. So let's talk about some of these. All right. Oh, boy. So, you guys, I had to get up. I had to wash my hair, blow it out. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. But let me know what you think about this report. Let me see. It's called Still a Dream. Okay.
We have Attorney Jones and Dwight McKee. I called Dr. Starks, and it looks like he just hung up after I put him on hold.
Oh, okay. Well. Okay.
But sending Attorney Jones and Dwight McKee through.
Okay. How you guys? How you doing?
Pretty fair.
Okay. Hope it's
Good morning.
better
Doing
now.
well.
Okay. There you go.
How are you feeling?
Oh, I feel much better. But, I'm going to get in bed once this is over.
60 seconds, everybody.
And just really give myself an opportunity to get well,
Gotta let the body heal.
You really do. And rest is the key. So. Okay. But thank you for agreeing to be on this segment. You're quite flexible. Love it. But Chuck Collins just does such great work. You all should get him on your show because it's a heck of a report. I mean, the whole thing is just fantastic.
10 seconds.
Oh, and we'll open. Let's go right to the To the audio.
Music or no music?
Can it go over the music? Can the
Yeah, it
music be a
can.
bit? Yeah.
Sure.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
At the same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, 1968, the last great campaign. He was diverted to Memphis, everyone, but this was the poor people's campaign. Reverend James Bevel, my father, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and some others said, Memphis, yeah, we need to go there, but right now we've got so much momentum. So many people are now jumping in. They want to go sit in on the mall on Washington. Doc, let's go to Memphis. Something about Memphis just doesn't feel right. There we go. Well, the Institute for Policy Studies has projected that it will take more than 500 years for African Americans to achieve economic equality in the United States. If you can believe this, everybody, median household income for African Americans has grown just 0.3% since the turn of the century, and it is still lower today than white median family income in 1963. The black-white home ownership divide remains unabridged, according to this report. After more than 60 years, black home ownership has increased from 38% in 1960 to 44% in 2021. It's just an increase of 6%, everybody. And if you try to look up this study, you'll see black economic equity and black economic equality conflated. Don't fall for that. We're talking about equality, not equity. Equity means that, we'll just keep on at the same pace and maybe we'll get there someday, perhaps. No. Equality is about getting equality, getting it right now. So let's talk about this, everybody. This report has some tremendous recommendations, full employment, and not the least of which they're talking about land ownership. Black people coming out of slavery own 14 million acres of farmland in the United States. We've been hooked and crooked out of 90% of that farmland. We own less than 1.4 million acres of farmland today. So one of the recommendations of this particular study is to implement a massive land and home ownership program, because this is what happened for white people in the United States. Devin, play the next one. And then I want, of course, Dwight McKee and Dr. Bob Starks and Attorney Gerald Jones to react to this, because it gives us the full context.
The first
Devin?
one we
Yes,
played
let's
today?
play the first one. Yep.
Okay.
The Negro. Every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land, nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Well, that was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, as he, in 1968, again, as he was looking at as many people said, he was becoming increasingly critical of the economic structure of the United States. Baked in the cake is inequality, and especially for the formerly enslaved African American. So we've got Dwight McKee, we've got Attorney Darrell Jones, Transformative Justice Coalition, we've got Dr. Bob Starks. Let me start with you, Dr. Starks. Dr. Starks, what do you make of this report, and particularly in light of what you just heard Dr. King say?
Well, Dr. King put it in absolute great terms. He was, of course, brilliant, and I don't think I've heard anybody other than Reverend Jackson put it in such splendid terms that we can understand it. Everybody understands that. I'm concerned about the 500 years. I don't know exactly what we can do. I have some ideas of what we can do to make that not 500 years, but 5 years, hopefully. Mm-hmm. We're talking about all kinds of things, and of course, as you know, the poverty line is too high. That's one thing. In other words, people below the poverty line are totally ignored. Our politicians running for office never mention the word poverty. They talk about middle class, but nobody talks about poverty. So I think we've got to put poverty at the top of the political terminology and do something about it. And hopefully we can. First of all, I agree with your speakers before now that talked about land, and Dr. King talking about land, because land, of course, and home ownership is the basis for generational wealth and generational movement up the income ladder. And of course, the other thing, of course, is jobs. But land is basically the base of economic wealth in this country. Mm-hmm.
Darrell Jones, your thoughts? Attorney Jones?
Says he's there.
I listened, Santita, to all that's being said, and needless to say, it grows great concern. I'm really appreciative to the Institute for Policy Studies for the analysis that it gives. Appreciative, and I don't even know the other word to use. Shocked by the thought that we would have to wait 500 years for equality. And as Dr. Starks was just saying, something has got to be done to speed this up, to speed this process up. And in looking at the study that was done, it's not just economics, because you look at education, you look across the board at all the structural inequality that's there, and the question becomes, what do we do to speed this up so that equality really becomes not just a passing thought, but a reality, and something that can be done within our lifetime? That's the real question as I see it. And I agree, wholeheartedly with what Dr. Starks was saying, is that, action must be taken, and we can't just simply continue to look at the report, but we got to make the action side of that report come to life.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, what Dr. King was talking about is Lincoln, when he knew he was going to have to emancipate the slaves, who also was a white supremacist, for the record, you all, built into the country a means by which white people could control the land in perpetuity. He passed the Homestead Act in 1862, and that act gave most Europeans who were coming over here access to all of the lands in the west of the Mississippi, 160 acres apiece at $1 an acre. Over 5 years, you had to pay it. 300,000 Europeans took advantage of it. It really gave them a lock on the land in perpetuity. And so money is not wealth. Land is wealth. And you can't close that gap by income. You cannot close the equality gap trying to generate enough income to be competitive, because, again, on that 160 acres is not just your house. It is the animals that you grow for food. It is the crops you grow for food. It is the mineral resources that's in the ground. You may have a little oil well on that land. It's hard to compete with 160 acres of land that is resource-based by making $100,000 a year as a fireman. That gap is going to take 1,000 years. You can close that gap in 1,000 years. Unless you talk about redistributing the land. The problem with that is the way this system is set up. The guys that have the deeds to those lands, and they've had them for 150 years, is they will fight to the death before they let you take that land. You really can't create equity in the society under capitalism, because capitalism on the industrial side of the country is based on cheap labor. And so they will also always need a cheap labor base for their wealth, who is not land-based but industry-based, to create the kind of wealth that they create. And so they will always need military prison industrial complex. They will always need to import cheap labor from overseas. They will also always need to set these banana republics up to exploit their land and their labor. And so on both sides of the economy in this country is based on intrinsic racism. White people in the West who owns the land, who cultivate the land, it's locked in. And the industrial side of the country is locked in because they've locked us in to become the cheap labor base. And if the only way to make any indentation in it at one level is from a tax system, you can't do it under capitalism. But if you move more toward a socialist economy and really let the rich pay 50, 60, 70% of the taxes as they used to pay. They used to pay up to 90%. And the poor have no need to not pay any taxes and let that burden be carried by the rich and the wealthy. Then you can at least make some headway in that. But what has happened there is even the wealthy has reduced their tax obligations at the expense of whatever services they were providing, goods and services they were providing for the poor. And so it will never be righted in this country because it's built on equality and racism and white superiority.
Well, you know, their recommendations are advocacy for full employment and guaranteed jobs. They want they said you've got to have a massive land and home ownership program. You got to commit to individual asset building. I mean, it enacts policies to reduce dynastic concentrations of wealth and power, Dwight, explore targeted reparations. Dr. Starks, what do you think about that? Because it seems that their solutions are pretty bold. I'm not going to call them radical. They're bold and necessary.
Yeah, I think they are necessary. We cannot continue at the rate we're going, and especially in a city like Chicago. If you remember, the city of Chicago has one of the lowest levels of home ownership on the part of African Americans of any city in the country. In addition to being one of the most segregated cities, it has one of the lowest rates of home ownership by African Americans, while at the same time, the rate of the percentage of money that has to go into down payments is going up. And of course, one of the things that really is most urgent is that when white assessors assess property owned by African Americans in this country, they always come out lower than if it was a white ownership. So there are all kinds of things that need to be done. I think some form of reparations in this regard has to be put into effect immediately if we're going to do this in this generation rather than waiting 500 years.
500 years. It's very interesting, Attorney Darrell Jones, that they would come out with this report at this time. 513 years. We don't have that long. I mean, America is socially, politically, and culturally a tinderbox right now.
You got it. You got it. Especially since, as you pointed out, we're giving more than $100 billion to Ukraine. And, that's
wait a minute. And you offer $700 to the people of Lahaina? They did that on the same day. Wait. $20+ billion more dollars to Ukraine, and you offer them $700? Are you for real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what happens.
Oh, wow.
And then you have a number of homeless people living on the streets of the city. And, and then there are more homeless people coming in as migrants. So it's a crazy thing. I don't know where and how we can reverse this trend of growing poverty. It's not stable poverty, it's growing.
Well, we have 7 million more hungry people in 2023 than we had in 2022. Median rent in the United States is $2,000. Attorney Darrell Jones, I only have a few minutes left here. How can nobody can afford that? Attorney Jones?
And Santita, you're right on the point, and that becomes the question: is how do we enact a solution that is realistic? Oftentimes we throw out the statement, we need to tax the rich more. You can take that income and use it to balance out some of the inequities that exist within the system. But I'm not certain how realistic that is. I'm not certain how realistic an approach that is. I mean, in theory, and it is a realistic approach. However, in practice, politically, I'm not certain that it's there. I don't believe that you're going to have the leading Democratic candidate saying, this is what we're going to do on taxing the rich and survive an election. I don't think that's going to happen. We know that the trickle-down theory that they talked about with tax breaks to the rich and that subsequently helping the lower income, that didn't work. And so the question becomes, how do you devise a resolution to the problem opportunity that would exist. I think it has to be something that's really designed and focused to help the African Americans, specifically the African American, and all that those experiences that we've experienced to get that toehold and be able to move into an equitable position and experience that economic equality. Right now, it ain't there. We thought the GI Bill would do it. It didn't do it. We had redlining that sidelined all of the home ownership programs and trying to buy in the neighborhoods, and then you have all of the stuff that's being done with regards to mortgage loans and African Americans in particular being taken advantage of. So all of these things are the pot that we have to deal with regards to trying to work our way into a position of coming up with a plan that will lead to total equality.
Everybody stay here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Stella from Texas, let me bring you up. I want you to stay with me for a little while so that we can engage you off air. Everybody stay here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Stella, how you doing?
Fine, how are you?
I'm so glad, Miss Stella. I'm glad that you joined us. I've got about a minute before we go off air, but I want you to stay with us. Still a dream. And I've put it on my Twitter feed. I've put it on my Facebook, and I will put it here. You go to inequality.org. It's something that we need to pass along to everybody. Are you surprised by the findings, Miss Stella?
Yes, a little bit I am, because I thought things were much better than that.
Well, things are better than they have been. You can only imagine how much worse they would have been without these titans of the civil rights struggle. Oh, they've made a lot of progress, but baked in the cake, in this American cake, is this kind of inequality, right? The thing is, we have to continue to fight.
Yes, and the fight is going to continue for a long time. That's because it slays me to think that it would take 500 years. Like you said, we don't have 500 years. We've got to get busy.
Oh, we sure do. Stay right there, everybody. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Going to get some closing thoughts from Dwight and from everybody. Call us, everybody. Well, no, you can't call now, but you can go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I love you, everybody. I'm going to represent this report again this week because the findings have been so stunning to everybody. And I think that, you need to pass it along. Go to inequality.org, Miss Stella. Inequality.org. And you can download Still a Dream. Still a dream. It's our nightmare. Still a dream. Still a dream. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, God bless. Dwight McKee, Miss Stella's still here. You see, she's surprised by 513 years. I mean, in the numbers, actually, if you dig down into the report, by other metrics, it will take it even longer. Are you surprised by them, Dwight?
No, because I understand economics, and the reality is we'll never get there. You can't fight your way there, because again, you're trying to create equity or equality, measuring income to assets, to land, and it can't be done that way. A house is a liability. It only becomes an asset if you can borrow against it. Otherwise, it's another bill that you pay. It's a debt on your ledger sheet until it's paid off. Yeah, it's the only real way, and you can't say that in this country without the FBI arresting you, is you have to have massive land distribution. What Castro did in Cuba is he took the land from the rich and divided it and gave it to the poor. You can have this massive inequality in who owns and controls the land. And so you would have to take each one of these people who, by the benefit of government and cavalries, own 200, 300, 400, 500 acres of land today, take that land from them and give plots of that land to the poor so they can, they can grow their food, they can create value, they can create commerce, they can buy and trade and barter. But this country, that becomes, communism and socialism. And this country is not willing to do that because it is built on capitalism. It is built on inequality. It is the foundation of the country itself. And so, that gap is going to continue to exist until there's a massive redistribution of land. The other part of that is the white people have the right to print the money. And as long as they got the Federal Reserve and have the right to print the money at their discretion, that you will never catch up because all they have to do to stay ahead is print more money and decide who gets it. And so unless you have the right to print your own money and create the value for your money, again, you will never catch up in this society. The inequality is locked in.
Is Mama D still there?
Yes. Should I send her through?
Yes, please.
We must understand that after the end of Reconstruction, land was being distributed west of the Mississippi. African Americans went places like Kansas, Nebraska, out in the west, and some got land, but the white settlers came in and took the land away from them through violence. So land in America, according that is related to African Americans, was accompanied by violence on the part of whites against black landowners. Secondly, that same kind of violence was perpetrated against African American landowners in the South through the Ku Klux Klan. And remember that not only was it violence, but it was backed up by the legal system, because African Americans could not then go to the legal system and have their land turned back to them. People were cheated out of land. My family owned at least 300-400 acres of land on my mother's side, but over time they were cheated out of it through the legal system. And then lastly, the economic system did not allow African Americans to own and keep land because they didn't have access to mortgages. And even if they got the mortgage, again, they were cheated out of it through the legal system and or violence. So those two things, the legal system has to be taken into account. And until you have the courts and the legal system to protect black ownership, we will never get anywhere.
Mama D, what's on your mind today?
Oh, well, hallelujah, greetings to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Reports, if not reparation. The 1863 to 1963 Emancipation March on Washington was about the Negro is not free, and we've come here to cash a check. But of the 16 paragraphs, only 3 of them, the dream portion, is talked about. And when the language changed to minorities consisting of countries and added white women, everybody on the planet was a minority except the white male. Now, my question is this. Do you think the policies that say bilingual is preferred and it doesn't matter how you came or how long you've been here, we are all the same, is insulting to enslaved ancestors who arrived in chains and was held in chains as a movable property thing called chattel for 246 years, followed by 88 years of segregation laws to keep the status of the Negro, not everybody, but the Negro down until 1954.
Anyone want to take that? Dwight?
I don't know. What's the question, Mama D?
My question is, do you think the policies of today, because the Negro is free, but he's still not equal, the policies of today that says bilingual preferred, when American English is our mother tongue language and the only language that we have, bilingual preferred, and it does not matter how long you have been here or how you came, we are all the same. Is that insulting to kidnap ancestors who arrived in chains and was held in chains for 246 years as a movable property thing called chattel, followed by 88 years of segregation laws to keep the status of the Negro down, not everybody, is insulting. And that is the problem. Saying we're just like everybody else.
You're not just insulting, but designed to maintain the status quo. It was not an insult. It was a strategy to make sure that black men were locked at the bottom and everybody else who was not a black man could benefit off of the whatever overlays they had in the economy. So it was designed to keep us on the bottom. The ones that benefited the most, of course, as everybody knows, is white women, many of them who was representing their white husbands. So they made more money off affirmative action than anybody else. Hispanics have had the benefit of affirmative action, but they come from a different world than we come from. They come from a world where they have family who also owns land in their home countries. They know their countries of origin, and they're still connected to it. And so they're able to create income here, but they build wealth in the country that they came from because they send their income back to their home countries, hoping that their families can create wealth back there. We don't have that option. Our option is just to keep working for income. And again, the whole system is based on margin of profit. So they have to have built into the system a certain level of unemployment in order that the system can compete against itself and labor can always operate from the bottom up. And so there's always going to be 4 or 5 or 6% unemployment there, which is always going to be at our expense. So we always So we've been taught to fight, and you can fight over, the principles and the right to vote and the right for public access and those kinds of things, and the right to education. But the fact of the matter, the inequality is built in the system, and unless you or redesign the system, it'll never be equitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, of course, I agree with you that it's built in, and that's CPT. And we have to realize that. But again, I repeat, we cannot give up. We have to find a way to fight the legal system and, as you stated, the economic system, because it's geared toward keeping African Americans at the bottom. That's a reality.
I mean, the system itself, the whole world economic system that we're under at this time is geared against the people. Only 15% of the world own 85% of the land. The largest landowner on earth was Queen Elizabeth. Now it's her son. At one time, she controlled 1/6 of the earth's landmass. That is how the powerful behave. That is what they do.
And you remember the English motto, the sun never sets on the British Empire.
The question has been, how much of America do we actually own? Because of the Lloydal rights, which I'm sure you would know something about, Daryl Jones. I mean, really, because we almost behave like we're still a colony sometimes. Really. What deal was cut here? It's just a thought. Anybody there? Okay. So, I think what we're going to have to do, I agree. I'm hearing something in the background. What we're going to have to do, I still think I agree with all of you, but I think that you do have to keep hope alive and keep fighting to create a system that is fair. Because the fact is, the system, I mean, I'm not going to give up because this is God's earth. Now the fact is, many of us have to be brought up to speed spiritually to know that that the earth belongs to us too. We think it belongs to Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, the queens, the kings, which is why which is why we're still bowing and scraping to them today. You have the monarchs in Europe and around the world, and you have oligarchs in the United States, and we think they're superior to us. Until we change our mindset, we're still going to be here. We're still going to think we're asking for too much instead of asking for things to be equal and fair. We've been shortchanged. We've been jammed. And every time someone comes, God sends us someone to tell us that, we get caught up in their personal lives, the little things that they are and are not, and then we lose. And you never know who the oligarchs are. You never know their personal peccadillos. You never really know what happens with the royal families. You never know because they're protected.
Right.
Protected.
That's true.
And we need to stop that. I don't care what anyone's personal life is. Everybody's got one, or they're ambitious for one. I don't care about that. What I care about is the fact that 7 million more Americans do not have something to eat today than last year. I care that everybody from Lahaina was offered $700 from our government, while on the same day we gave $20 billion more dollars plus to Ukraine. You don't even know where Ukraine is.
Right.
$700 to the people of Lahaina. They're the indigenous people. They're the people who've been fighting to hold on to their land. And mysteriously, that's the only part of Maui that got burned to cinders. We're looking for 800 plus more people. The children are in the houses because they were staying home that day because of electrical issues. They know what those 800 plus people are, Dr. Starks, Attorney Jones, and Dwight McKee. They were incinerated.
Absolutely incinerated. And all kinds of excuses are being given as to how and why it happened. And of course, $7 million per person is not sufficient for those people. And we all know it, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But again, I have to say, you're right, I agree with you, but we cannot give up. We've got to fight and change the economic, the legal, and the violent system in this country, i.e. racism at its highest. And how do we do it?
Well, yeah, but you got to know the realities of what you're fighting with and what you're fighting against. You know, it's the rest of the world knows what equality is, because the first thing they tell the colonizers is, first you have to get out of my country. First you got to get my land back. You know, first we got to take over the political order because we're the majority. They understand what freedom looks like. And we don't have that same prerogative because we're the only ones, the colonized people, that are in the minority of the colonizer. And so unless we understand what we're fighting against, and what I think our fight, honestly, is a fight for the totally disenfranchised, and a fight for the homeless, and a fight for the hungry. We can make progress in those fights. We can get everybody at least a place to stay. You know, we can help make sure everybody got bread every day. That's a winnable fight. But in terms of, we're talking about equity and equality, you have to overturn the entire system and redistribute the land and the wealth in the land.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a systemic problem. That is, but how do we overturn the system? That's the question.
You can't, unless you're ready to have a revolution, you can't. I mean, you can do it with the political order, but again, the political order is controlled by the people who also own the system. And so when you have somebody progressive comes along, I mean, that's what you're up against. That'll be what you're up against.
Or you're marginalized.
And so unless you...
Because remember,
or you're marginalized.
Hoover decided no more martyrs. That ended with Dr. King. What we decided to do was really we marginalize you. We don't mention you anymore. I mean, but what we will do
or we lock you up in jail.
Absolutely. Or what we will do is discuss your personal challenges. I am so sick of that. I could have paid money. I could have told you they were going to bring out my father's child when he was about to lead a march on Tallahassee to stop the steal of the 2000 election. Mm-hmm. And that's when the Inquirer showed up and wait a minute, Dwight. That's when the Inquirer showed up at my parents' house in DC. I mean, really? This girl is grown. She's successful. And wait a minute. And she has gone on about her business. In the meantime, you have someone who stole an election, who killed more than 1 million Iraqis, destabilized part of the world. He can't go to several parts of the world because he's a war criminal. Are you serious? And you want to get caught up in foolishness? Stormy Daniels, that case needs to be thrown out. I'm no apologist for Trump. But if you're going to try him on something serious, get serious about this, y'all. Stop getting caught up in a lot of foolishness, because half of us would not want to stand up under this scrutiny ourselves. But you want to gossip about somebody else's stuff, but you want to obscure you want to hide your own stuff. I mean, really? Enough. $700 to the people of Lahaina, Dwight. $700. And you give $20+ billion to the people of Ukraine on that day. We've given them more than $100 billion for what? You don't even know where it is. These people have lost everything.
Don't
They've lost everything.
No.
And all you can come up with is
you are not-
$700? What? Man, please.
But again, if I can make a point,
Yeah.
you are not giving $20 billion to the people of Ukraine. That's the fallacy.
I know you're not giving it to the people of Ukraine.
You're giving $20 billion to the war machine because you're lending them money to buy weapons that are made in America. It's part of the military industrial complex.
And they keep...
So the people in Ukraine will be as poor when we started as they were when you left.
And until...
That money goes right. It's a pass-through. That money is a pass-through.
That's why the march against the invasion of Iraq and the millions of people who came out all over the world, that's why that was so important. And it was important to shut it down. Because more and more people are getting wise to this.
Yeah. But look at the amount of money. If indeed Ukraine wins the war, they will have to rebuild. And guess who is going to give the money to, as was said by Dwight, it's a pass-through. It's going to be American money. It's going to go to help rebuild Ukraine. So another...
It's going to go to Halliburton. You can be very specific on this, small stars. It's going to go to Halliburton. That's what they do. That's how they get paid. Is he rebuild country there. And so the money becomes just recycled. It's it's a show game. And they ain't going to win. They can't beat Russia and China. They're not going to win.
That part.
So they ain't gonna win anyway, and so it's all a shell game for the same people in charge to make more and more and more money and control more and more and more wealth.
And until we get wise to the game and decide that the jig is up, you all want to make this about blue no matter who, hate the Republicans. No, everybody ought to be tired of being this. That's a shell game too. Stop being played. Because the people who used to march for peace are now marching for war. The Democrats. The people who used to march for war now saying we need to get out of, starting with Trump, we need to get out of these crazy wars. We don't have any use for them. You see how things flipped?
At the same time, we're not giving a penny to Haiti and the continent of Africa. Can you imagine how much the continent of Africa could use $100 billion? That would help to bring them out of poverty.
Well,
and of course,
if we cut the right deals with them, which is why they're kicking us out. And that's why Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso and all these other places said, get out of here. And they told these West-favoring African heads of state, if you let them in here, you're gonna have a problem with us too. The people of Niger have called for this revolution. The people of Niger said, France, get out. They've been complaining about France. I mean, France doesn't even use the franc. You use the euro when you are in France. But all of their colonies, their neo-colonies, have to use the franc. Are you serious? Come on. What? This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, I think that, we need to be clear on what the game is. 513 years for economic equality. The Institute for Policy Studies says first you need a massive land giveaway.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Massive financial infrastructure for every single African American. A massive jobs program specifically for African Americans. Specifically. They were targeted for the problems. You got to target them for the solutions. It's just that simple.
Exactly. But that is a change in the entire system that Dwight is talking about. And help me come to an agreement as to what we have to do as a group of people and as a country. Right?
Yeah. That's a question.
What do we have?
Yeah.
What's your question?
The solutions.
About it,
the solutions, because indeed the people from IPS said, look, you need, I'll read it. He said, okay, advocate for full employment and guaranteed jobs. That's what Humphrey Hawkins did 50 years ago. Implement a massive land and home ownership program to address the persistent home ownership gap between Black and white Americans. Commit to individual asset building, including financial education, asset matching programs, supportive policies to provide access to wealth building opportunities for Black Americans. Enacts policies to reduce dynastic concentrations of wealth and power, tackling the structural barriers that hinder economic progress for Black Americans. Explore targeted reparations as a means of rectifying historical injustices and provide meaningful redress for the economic disparities faced by Black Americans. The fact is, every time you have helped Black Americans, you've made America what America's supposed to be. You're not going to help Black Americans and not make America right and not help white Americans. That's a fact.
But every time you got a chance to help Black America, you flip the switch.
I got it. Drop a bomb.
Affirmative action was a way to help do that. But now everybody is equal. There is no preferential treatment based on race, even though oppression was based on race. And so the debt ceiling was a chance to do that, where you could have brought more poor and disenfranchised people into the economy. What they do is they gave 60 to 70% of the economy to the military-industrial complex and left us to divide the last 10, 15% between us and the poor. And so they had a real chance to do it and didn't do it. Whenever there is an opportunity for advancement of people of color, of Black people, of disenfranchised people, they flip the switch. And so the inequality is built more in. When there was a chance, when the Wall Street crowd stole all of the money, and they could have locked them up, given us that money back, and save our houses based on talk. What did they do? They bailed them out, and they let us lose the little housing we had left. And so, again, they flipped the switch. They got bonuses, and we got homelessness. Come on, y'all. Whenever they have a chance to, they flip the switch. That's how this country is set up, to flip the switch. And so when we say fight, 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 we continue to fight. But always understand, as Trump told us all, the odds is going to always be against you because the game is rigged. That's why they're trying to lock him up, because he was honest enough to tell us, y'all, I'm in the game. The game is rigged.
Against you.
Thank you. That's so good talking to you, and I will continue to dialogue with Dr. White so that we can come up with a solution.
Well, of course, I can't wait to talk about it.
Okay.
The solution is the redistribution of land. Again, when you say that in America, that communism is atheism, and atheism is godlessness, and godliness is an evil that is to be eradicated. And so they start dropping you of the communists, because you're talking about the only possible solution is that common people should have some some equity in the land. But you can't say it because you become a communist. You become a socialist. Dr. King said we need to have a distribution of wealth. They say, oops, he's a socialist.
Oh, my gosh.
He's a communist. Kill him, kill him, kill him. And so we end up, because we've been so brainwashed, working against our own interests, because we're afraid to talk about the things that will make us free. We're brainwashed to operate in their interests rather than our own. We see the Bolshevik Revolution as a evil, when what they did was the Romanovs owned all of the land, them and their families, and they went in and said, we're taking our land back and passing around among the peasants. And so we said, oh no, we could never do that over here. That's a evil. That's demonic. The things that the solutions, we are built in to reject, because our education has worked against us rather than for us, because we've been educated in behalf of somebody else's best interest and not our own. And they control the education system, which is why they don't even want us to be awake. They don't even want us to know the truth anymore.
You just get a giant amen from me. And let me read some of these comments before we go. Some of them. Oh, bless you. Say, oh, Laura, you said it's been an excellent show. Thank you. Republicans said tide raises all boats, but these black people don't even have a life raft. I hear you. Let me see who else. Oh boy, wait. I'm trying to get back to you. Okay. Tracy said, so Biden voted to confirm that black man who knew Thomas was a sellout. Everybody knew. And now you're mad because he was confirmed. Everybody knew who Clarence Thomas was. He was always a problem. Heads you lose, tails you lose. Wake up, people. We need super majorities. No, everyone knew who Clarence Thomas was. Everyone knew it. Charles Ogletree knew. May he rest in peace. Anita Hill knew. Everybody knew who Clarence Thomas was. We just knew that when they racialized it and talked about when he talked about high-tech lynching, many black people fell for it, unfortunately. And then shame on us. The person who guided him through the process was Joe Biden. That is a fact. And Orrin Hatch, my dear friend, God rest his soul. Mike says, if people who we vote for do not make policy to support our advancement, then explain to me how we're supposed to advance. You kick them out. Jewel says, great show. And Tracy said, we will hold Democrats to account. Okay, gotcha. And let me see who else. Let me see. John Cunningham says, absolutely keep it real. Carolyn Russ says our options are to work from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck to keep food on our table. That's it. You're working for the man. Sorry about the sound today, everybody. I don't know what is going on, but I'm trying to work it out. And you hear the first Hispanic superhero movie came out this weekend. God bless them. That's a good thing. Tracy said, y'all have been complaining for a while now and nothing is changing. Let another generation learn from the past and build upon it in new ways. What do you say to that, Dwight? Are you just complaining?
No, I'm not complaining at all. I'm analyzing. I'm just telling you again what the realities of what we're up against. Mm-hmm. It's Dr. King did. Dr. King explained in great detail what we were up against and had some real solutions. A guaranteed income would have helped, lift up the poor. Legitimate housing, a government-based housing program, which will really help the poor. He had free lunches in schools, which will help the poor. He had legitimate solutions. And what they do, they kill him. Because when you bring solutions to a militaristic, debaucherous culture, is they kill the prophets. They've been doing that since Jesus was around. Jesus said, "You kill the prophets." That's what empires do. Empires kill prophets.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reality is that you know what you're up against, but know it comes with the price of martyrdom. You know, you fight the good fight, but you understand that you are fighting giants, and that you better bring a slingshot and 4 or 5 stones with you, because the odds are stacked against you. And you hope for God's intervention and understanding at some point that ultimately he's in charge and he's going to take care of this one way or another. He's going to protect his own and he's going to punish his enemies. And you operate in that belief, and you fight the good fight in his behalf, knowing that ultimately he's going to be in charge and he's going to close the gap.
That's right, because these folks are coming for you. And if they don't come for you, they come for your children. If they don't come for you, they come for your children. That's what they do. I've seen it happen in my own family.
That's what they do.
Get it? That's what they do. So my brother went to jail because they couldn't get reverend. That's what they do. You know, it is what it is. But you have to keep fighting, because somehow or another, when I look at the Bible, at the end of the day, the last book in Revelation tells me that God has already won. God won. Now the question is, and on my great getting up morning, I want God to know that I was on God's side, not just in word, but in deed. Erica asked, can I ask how other races own their own businesses and doing so much better than blacks all over the country? That was why I gave you those YouTube. That's why I gave you those clips from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. White people, they were primed for success. They were given land. The land grant colleges were given to them. The banking system was created to advantage them, and on and on and on and on. And then you stigmatized Black people with racism. Please talk about a system that has advantaged you. Are you serious?
And they assault Black people. And so land leasing was set up that if any 2 Black men, we're tribal people, so we're always going to congregate somewhere. Any 2 Black people on the corner talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
If in the eyes of the policeman there was vagrancy, they could then justify locking you up, putting you in the system, and turning you to a land lease option. If too many Blacks own real estate or own businesses, they would target them to strategically put them out of business or burn down the town. Is whatever progress we had made, they made it a point to target and to take us out. So whatever industries we started making progress, when we was making progress in terms of our culture, in the music industry,
mm-hmm.
they created the Harvard plan to figure out how to take Black music from the Black folk that owned it.
And came
when
after
we had
Al
the Black
Bell.
Hair Project.
Remember that? Came after Al Bell.
Al Bell
Stax
took him
Records.
out.
Took him out.
When we had the hair industry, they systematically figured out how to take that from us. George Johnson, who was one of my good friends in the day, told me what they did is they sent the FBI. He had a patent on his products, and he had figured out how to make the best products that you could make. And nobody had his formulas. and he was not giving up his formulas. He told me himself, he said the FBI after him. And part of their investigation was they forced him to give up his formulas. And then L'Oreal and Revlon then reproduced his formulas and came out with Dark and Lovely.
And they were geniuses.
And strategically ran.
They were geniuses.
Strategically, whenever we make in one way or another, they mount up like an
Dwight?
assault us. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Couldn't hear you, hon.
Yeah, I think so. Whenever we make progress, they come together and they mount up like an eagle, and they move to take back whatever advancement we made in particular industries or particular areas. And you wonder why we decreased and they increased? Because they take what's theirs, then they take what's ours.
No, there's that part. I'm just saying. We've seen it, and we've seen it happen in real time. So while people are blaming Black people for where we are, no. The first time you dropped a bomb on American soil, white Americans dropped the bomb on prosperous Black people. Who does that? And then when we were down there a couple of years ago, commemorating the Tulsa bombing, white Tulsa was not with us. This was a Black thing. Indigenous people were there. So it's just, we're just trying to share with you what Dwight's trying to share with you is how the game is played. And how we get dealt out. Arlene said, get some rest. I promise you I will. Billy Hall, how you doing, sweetie? And let me see. I'm going to get some rest. I am. Tracy said, maybe you'll be the next martyr. Bless your heart. You said, but you doubt it? Well, if someone's not going to take it for the team, oh well. You said, maybe Biden is stealth about it to avoid martyrdom. He's not interested in being a martyr, Tracy. But you said you were going to call in the other day and you didn't. Shame. Let's say, D-Ray, Reverend is okay. He's doing well. He just keeps running himself. Arlene Williams talked about structural racism. Tracy, I told you have a whole lot to say behind this keyboard. Told you need to call in sometime. And D-Ray said, thank you, Brother Dwight, for spitting the knowledge. Carolyn Russ says, Dwight, thank you for keeping it real. And Robert says, truth is the truth no matter how you hate it. How about that? Is there anything else you'd like to say, Dwight, before we go?
Assalamu alaikum. Oh, yes, I do. So let me say something else. Is always try to look behind the veil, because what you see really is generally not the reality. It's not really what's really happening. And the first thing to do is when they want to assault us is they indulge in character assassination. They start looking for things in your history or creating things in your history to justify your illegitimacy. And then they use that to take you out of pocket. Mm-hmm. And if that don't work, then they lock you up in jail or they take you out of here. And so what they taught us to do is to blame ourselves for our dilemma. And 90% of it is being inflicted upon us. Like our children. Our children are being brainwashed by a music industry and a video industry that they don't control. And so when they shoot each other based on reflex and conditioning, in many ways, they're not even in control of their own thoughts
at all.
But we blame them rather than close, Warner Brothers down or Jeff Jam down or whatever these companies are that control the images that's brainwashing our children. We have to become much more sophisticated than that. And as your Reverend used to say, we have to really know who the enemy is,
Instead of looking at someone's personal life, what do I care about Stormy Daniels? Really? One man, don't you know, will try to hide. It's not even an affair. He slept with a woman, okay? That's not an affair. I mean, and if it were an affair, so what? He ain't trying to let his wife know? Yeah. Get out of here. You have your own personal life. You know how this works. Oh, that disqualifies him. Are you serious? No, Like I said, look, if you're going to come after someone, come after them on what is real. This other stuff this is foolishness. I wish somebody would go and shake hands with Kim Jong-un today. That's what we need. Oh, but that makes me a Trump lover. It sounds nuts. America cannot continue to fight these wars. We cannot afford them. We are run out of money. And China, they are our bankers, y'all. If China decided to call in the debt, we are sunk. They're our bankers. Are they not, Dwight?
And what happened when Dennis Rodman had access to him? He loved Dennis Rodman. He loved the Bulls. He loved Michael Jordan. And he was willing to open up diplomacy through Dennis Rodman. Invited him over there, had him put on basketball games, took him to his house, had lunch with him, had a genuine affection for Dennis Rodman, and he also identified with him as an oppressed America, Black America.
Absolutely.
And what did we do? We ridiculed Dennis Rodman, tried to turn him into a buffoon, and took him out of the loop because we didn't want peace. We wasn't looking for peace. We was looking for an excuse to drop more bombs.
Well, the country...
And did the Black community support Dennis Rodman? No, we drunk the lemonade. And said, no, this guy is a buffoon. Whatever he was supposed to be, it was working for him no. Who loved him?
Is that crazy?
But we bought the lemonade. Because again, just like our children, his mind is not controlled by them, we don't control our own mind because we don't control our own thinking.
You say, hey, this man wants to talk to us, y'all. Like, oh, we can't talk to him. Why? We don't have a peace treaty with them. We have an armistice agreement. We're still at war. Why are they shooting up these rockets? Because we're still at war with them. Why are we still at war with North Korea? We killed an entire fraction of their population. I mean, what? Are you serious? Stop. Just stop. Stop. And just concede that, you know what? These folks got my mind. I need my mind to be free. Ooh, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. Remember that? Dwight. Ooh, I wish I knew how.
And if a chosen white guy would have done the same thing Rodman did, he'd have been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Absolutely.
If he'd have been operating on behalf of the state and made the same intros that Rodman made, he'd have been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. Come on, y'all. Let's wake up. Let's get more sophisticated than we are.
Well, I tell you, I think some people are waking up. And I think that's a good thing. So, and I could see that from today. And I'm so glad we were able to get in those words from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King today. You know, when they say, "Oh, this is when Dr. King was taking a turn." So this is the guy who my parents worked for. Dr. King was Dwight was following Reverend, who was following him. They were following this vision, and then they killed him. And no one talks about J. Edgar Hoover. And what a dreadful man this was. Everyone wants to talk about Dr. King's personal life. I wonder if we can still admire him because he liked women. Really? That's a crime? This is someone who had a gun to his head every day. He didn't think he'd make it till the end of the day. The last year of his life, his staff members did not want to leave him alone because he had migraines that were, he was a chain smoker. When they performed the autopsy on him, at 39, he had the heart of a man who was nearly 70 years old. That's the kind of stress this man lived under. Are you for real? You want to talk to me about John Kennedy and all the women, someone that fine with all that power, and Dr. King who had all the charisma in the world? All these women want him. They're not going to leave him alone. Just stop, y'all. Stop. So take that off the table. John Kennedy was talking to Khrushchev. John Kennedy was opening the door to Castro. John Kennedy was going to get rid of the CIA. They killed him in front of his wife as his wife was turning to her right. "Honey, are you okay?" And they blew his head off. Who are these people? Wow, Jackie Kennedy, she died at 64. Baby, she didn't die. She imploded. She couldn't say anything because she was trying to keep her children alive. Has anyone seen the Zapruder film? They blew his brains out from the front as the Secret Service slowed the car down. Hey, y'all, stop. Robert Kennedy, he was killed. He was shot from behind, and we're still looking at Sirhan, who shot him from the front. He was shot by someone who was standing up on him. He had powder burns on his suit jacket. And the fatal shot was behind his ear. And y'all want to call his son a whack job? You call me a whack job. First time I saw someone point a loaded gun, at least that's what I thought it was, at my dad, I was about 5, and I came home traumatized. My mom said, "I don't need tears. I need witnesses." It might sound cold to you. But when Malcolm's kids were 5, they witnessed their father being blown to bits. Stop. We're going to stay in the same hole unless we change our thinking. Got to change your thinking. No, Tracy said, "Oh, you're denigrating him. Okay, nobody cares about his affairs." That's not true. That's what all the articles are about right now. And since, with all due respect, my parents worked for him when he was at his most unpopular, you can just freeze on that. I would never denigrate Dr. King. I mean, what are you, a troll or what? I invited you to call, not to be a guest, but to call. You don't want to call in, but you want to come in and you want to throw the conversation off. The only people I know who do that are intelligents. Is that who you are? If that's who you are, that's cool. Just let me know. Because you got a whole lot of time on your hands to do this without contributing anything meaningful to the conversation that's constructive. So enough, honey. I've given you more than enough time. Next. But Dwight, you want to have anything else to say before we go?
No, good to go. Assalamu alaikum.
No, I'm not going to block Tracy Carolyn. No, I'm not going to block her. Y'all talk to her. Love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you. We are here to have constructive conversations. Dwight, I have known since I was about 18 months, 2 years of age. He's seen a lot. So he shares things because he got a chance to be with my parents on the ground floor. He got a chance to know Reverend James Bevel and C.T. Vivian. All these people who you read about in history, these were real people to us. Real people. Ralph Abernathy, these are real people. Dr. King, these are real people. And in real time, we had to deal with the FBI sending tapes and spying, not just on Dr. King, but on all of us. He wasn't the only one. All of his staff were under threat. And some of them died under mysterious circumstances. No one who came out of this, right, Dwight? We have seen some things. I'm like, what are you talking about? If anything, I would think that you would want to hear the history. Or maybe you'll trust it more if you hear it from someone who was not there. I have a lot of respect for David Garrow, but he's reading the FBI reports. Let me tell you what happened. Okay, you want to read the FBI reports, or do you want to talk to the people who the FBI were reporting on? There are only a few of them left. That's what I'm talking about. And the game has not changed. That's why we're sharing these things with you. So, enough already. Have a great, great day, everybody. D. Ray said, wow, you've been Brother Dwight since you were a newborn. He wasn't a newborn child. He was a teenager, but he was very young. Oh, boy. Now, Dwight, did you know Dr. King personally? D. Ray wanted to know that.
I've seen him speak. I saw him in person. Mm-hmm. I never officially met him. So,
but you were around the people who were with him. Yeah.
Because I was around him. I was around him. I just never officially got a chance to meet him. But I was around him and heard him speak.
Well, explain that. I mean, most Black churches blocked him from their pulpits, right?
Right.
And our church allowed him. Please explain.
Well, most people. Well, there was a rift between him and the Southern Baptist and the National Baptists, because he wanted them to be more involved. When he came out of in his father, he wanted them more involved in social action issues. And J.H. Jackson, who was the head of the National Baptists, some say it was jealousy. Some I've heard from some of the members of the church told me that
that wait a minute, what?
Actually,
we couldn't hear you.
That J. Edgar Hoover had a foul on Joseph Jackson and told him that part of his mission, in order not to be exposed for some of his misdeeds, was to go after Dr. King or make sure he never deals with Dr. King. And I've heard that from very, very reliable sources. Some who had seen some of the church notes. And so Dr. King was unofficially barred from many of the Black churches and white churches in Chicago. And Daly also put a bounty on the head of any minister who would support Dr. King. And so when Dr. King came to town, invited by Addie Wyatt in the labor movement and John Porter and some of the more progressive Christians, and Al Raby on the education side, in most circles he was very unwelcome and was greeted with a lot of hostility. And so the 3 or 4 years he worked in Chicago, it was not like he was a hero here. My pastor, Reverend Evans, because of your daddy's influence, who was also a member of the church, who was one of the few pastors that really reached out to him and gave him a pulpit.
And what happened to Reverend Evans?
They closed his church down. He was building a church, and they cut all the money off, and then the church stood barren for 7 years. The new church was then just a shell for 7 years because they punished him for associating with Dr. King. And it was only when your daddy came out and worked a new mortgage out for him, that church was able to be built.
This is before my parents had owned their own house. They would only let him build it if my father co-signed. I don't know if Daddy was 30. And so the Reverend named him as a co-pastor. It was more of an honorific, but the fact is he actually, I think on paper had to be. Because he actually had to, that's the only way that he could have gotten the mortgage and got the church built. That was the only way. I mean, whew.
Because he was announced non grata by Daley and that crowd of Democrats who control the city and control Black political thought and Black religious thought then. And so it was only after Dr. King got killed that he became a hero in Chicago to the masses. And a lot of it was vicarious, through your daddy and Hardy and Barrett and some of the ministers setting up breadbasket. The more progressive ministers got involved in breadbasket and then brought their congregations in to support his legacy, which was built around your father and C.T. Vivian, who had moved here, and Bevel, who had moved here, and Dorothy Tillman, who had moved here. So it's a lot to be said for what the reality of that situation was, and not the mythology of it. Now everybody has a Dr. King breakfast, But it was not like, as Jesus said about Moses, it was not like that from the beginning.
Oh, Dwight, please. But it's true. It's true. It wasn't like that.
It's true.
And you're right. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. Dr. King was hated.
And I was very young, but I had come out of fellowship. And so I had your father had been our youth pastor. So I was already kind of reconditioned to favor the movement from your father and from Reverend Evans, who had been my pastor all my life, pretty much growing up in Chicago. And since I come to Chicago. And so most of the Youth Division at Fellowship then became the foundation of the movement at Breadbasket. He just kind of transferred his church over to Reverend, and we became Breadbasket. So the Mickey Warrens and the Stanley Keebles and the Lois Scotts, and we became kind of the nucleus of the organization. The Helen Paynes.
Kind of became the nucleus. You were the nucleus.
The James Dixons. Yeah, we became the nucleus of the organization. But it really was. He transferred to choir. The Fellowship Choir became the Breadbasket Choir. Billy Jones became the conductor. He transferred, our youth division. I became the head of the youth division on the board. Started traveling with Rev. He transferred our little deacon board over, so James Dixon, them, and Saint them ended up, Black Men Pushing. It was just a transfer of resources from our church to on Sundays to Breadbasket on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Lucille Loman, the church clerk, at Fellowship, became the first staff member at Breadbasket.
Wait, it became the everything.
The everything.
It became she was the person who absolutely organized and held Breadbasket and Push together.
And Push together. And Fellowship together.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and my sister Marty who had been the first secretary for fellowship, one of the first secretaries in fellowship, became the first secretary for Breadbasket, took all of the notes in initial meetings, and became the babysitter for you all, as my mother did. I mean, it just was a transfer of relationships from the church to the movement.
That's true.
That's the real story.
Making sure that my parents on $75 a week ate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, that's a real thing now.
And then the other progressive ministers got involved: the Reverend Barrett, the Reverend Hardys, the Reverend Thurmans.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't start coming in, and most of them came in because of their relationship with Reverend Evans, because they were differential to him.
Absolutely. And then Reverend Evans, and then out Lucille Conway Loman, after Dr. King was killed, said, "Okay, now you need to be ordained." What? Yeah, and she organized that. She and Reverend Evans did. And then C.L. Franklin preached the ordination sermon, because he was very progressive. It's a whole lot of history, everybody, and it comes straight out of the church. Does it not, Dwight?
Straight out the church.
Straight out the church. Straight out the church. Praise the Lord. Straight out the church.
And Reverend Evans became chairman of the board.
Well, he's the chairman emeritus. First chairman. So, and really became another father to my dad. Thank God for that. Absolutely did. But, you know, what a blessing. What a fellowship. What a fellowship. But I love you. What you, leaning. Leaning. And we're still leaning. And boy, we have seen some things. And so that's why we share what we share. Because, and Jewel says she appreciates you for telling this awesome story. And you're right, Robert. The last thing the evil conspirators behind the JFK assassination wanted was for RFK to become the president of the United States. Yes, because it was known that had he become president, he was going to reopen the investigation on the people who killed his brother. So just as it looked like he was about to become the nominee, they killed him. And y'all want to call his son a nut? This man has seen some things. Whatever you think about it, he has seen some things. He has seen some things. So, you know, look, just you all need to, and the vitriol and the anger that I hear, Dwight, why isn't Cornel West running as a Democrat? Why should he? Why is Robert Kennedy in the race? Why not? We just don't need Trump.
And for those,
And
for those who can't deal with it, let's just kiss and say goodbye, as Manhattan say.
Oh my goodness! Thank you for. I was going to let you finish that. Let's just kiss and say goodbye.
And say goodbye.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you. I can't lie. Oh, baby, won't you try? Well, then you know what? Let's just kiss and say goodbye, and let the Manhattan say goodbye. Yes. You are crazy. Oh, I think you wrote half these songs, but that's it. Let's just kiss and say goodbye. And then sometimes all you can do is hum through that. Let's just kiss and say goodbye. And we're going to do that. The people are going to keep on going with this thing And I'm glad about that. But Dwight, I want to thank you for giving us so much time today. And D. Ray said, you better know this: if Trump wins in 2024, the president, the USA is in trouble. I think we're going to have challenges no matter what, D. Ray, because the world is reorganizing around us and we're not even aware. Dwight, why don't you speak to that before you go?
Say that again.
D. Ray said,
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
She says that if Trump wins, and we hear this is a common refrain, if he wins, America's going to be in trouble, which is what the corporate media continues to tell us.
And I think she's right. America's going to be in trouble, but we've been in trouble for about 400 years. And that trouble has just come and show up for us because Trump was in power. We always been in trouble. Now, what will probably happen, she could be right on that, is that the trouble will be more democratized, which is why now it's an issue for everybody, because they feel like the trouble is our birthright, but trouble is new for them, and so they're trying to utilize us to save all their trouble. But the fact of the matter is, it don't matter who's in office. We're in trouble with Biden. They just gave you the statistics, didn't you, on Hero? 7 more million people in poverty.
Hungry, yeah.
500 years behind. Y'all didn't hear the show? I mean, what do you all be listening to? It is like we ain't in trouble already. And they just told you that we 500 years behind. And Trump ain't the president. Come on, y'all. Wake up, everybody. Shit, stop sleeping in bed.
No more backward thinking.
No more backwards thinking. Start thinking ahead. Stop letting these people control your minds. So that means the converse is the true. If Biden wins, then we out of trouble. Come on, please, D-Ray. Give me a break.
Well,
Biden's president now, we in trouble.
In trouble. In trouble. We're in trouble. Oh yeah, look at Niger. That's why I've had us look at that. Niger is letting you know, these West African nations, these former colonized countries, Brazil, all these folks, they're letting you know where the world is going. And they have moved away from the West, which is what we're part of. That's why Ukraine has stayed a regional conflict, because most of the world said, we're lining up behind Russia. I mean,
and they have dropped the dollar, saying that we the only ones in the world that's chasing the dollar. Everybody else is running from the dollar.
Do you hear what you
But
just
we
said?
so confused. We the only ones in the world chasing the dollar. Everybody else in the world is running from the dollar. We'll leave that one alone for a minute. Take that day.
Well, it's happening. And I brought people on and they said, well, that's not true. I'm like, sweetie, these folks are reorganizing. They're reorganizing. Niger told Victoria Nuland, if you stay here, we're going to eliminate the president who we have in custody. The guy y'all like. So Victoria, get out of here. Unless we're going to renegotiate this relationship with France, and we're going to do it right now. We're going to renegotiate the relationship with all y'all. Or you going to have a problem. You ain't got but 5 more minutes to be here. Remember, we wanted to leave after August 31st? Afghanistan? Was that it? And we said we need a few more days, maybe a few more weeks. And Afghanistan said, no, you have August 31st. Remember all the folks falling off the wings of the plane? They were like, oh, Lord, but no. Because they were told, that's it. You out of here. It's a whole new world, everybody. That's right, Robert. It's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. So just keep that in mind. And D-Ray's one of your big. D-Ray said, "Brother Dwight not playing today." D-Ray loves you, Dwight. Just so that you know, she loves you. So y'all got this. I love you, and thank you for giving me the energy today. But I am now going to. This is a wrap for me. But I love you all. Love you. God bless you. Have a great one. Love you, sweeties. I'll